Hello, everyone. We're back with another holiday screenplay reading from the Quarantine Theater Company. We're doing the holiday classic, "It's a Wonderful Life." I am the host, Curtis. I will be playing the main character of George Bailey. I'm gonna do my best Jimmy Stewart's. It's not gonna be great. I'll do my best. Uh, Anne is gonna be Mary and a bunch of other characters, including Cousin Tilly. Erik is going to be the antagonist, Mr. Potter, and some other roles, including Ernie, one of George's friends. We have uh, Jarod as Clarence, our scene description, as Uncle Billy, and as George's brother Harry, and some other characters. We have Kenzie as Mrs. Bailey, the mother, and little Zuzu, and other characters. We have Zach as Pa Bailey, and the angel Joseph, and Barton and the bar owner, Mr. Martini. Travis as the pharmacist, Mr. Gower, and one of George's friends, Bert, and some other characters. We have Jessica as rich girl Violet, as Annie and Janie, and some other characters. And that's pretty much our cast roundup. So without further ado, Jarod, take us away.
It's a Wonderful Life by Francis Goodrich, Albert Hackett, Frank Capra, Joe Swirling. Fade in, night sequence. Series of shots of various streets and buildings in the town of Bedford Falls, somewhere in New York State. The streets are deserted, the snow is falling. It is Christmas Eve. Over the scenes, we hear voices praying.
Owe everything to George Bailey. Help him, dear Father.
Joseph, Jesus, and Mary, help my friend George, Mr. Bailey.
Help my son George tonight.
He never thinks about himself, God. That's why he's in trouble.
George is a good guy. Give him a break, God.
I love him, dear Lord. Watch over him tonight.
Please, God, something's the matter with Daddy.
Please bring Daddy back.
Camera pulls up from the Bailey home and travels up through the sky until it is above the falling snow and moving slowly toward a firmament full of stars. As the camera stops, we hear the following heavenly voices talking. As each voice is heard, one of the stars twinkles brightly.
Hello, Joseph. Trouble?
Looks like we'll have to send someone down. A lot of people are asking for help for a man named George Bailey.
George Bailey, yes. Tonight's his crucial night. You're right. We'll have to send someone down immediately. Whose turn is it?
That's why I came to see you, sir. It's that clockmaker's turn again.
Oh, Clarence. Hasn't got his wings yet, has he? We passed him up right along.
Because you know, sir, he's got the IQ of a rabbit.
Yes, but he's got the faith of a child. Simple. Joseph, send for Clarence.
A small star flies in from left of the screen and stops. It twinkles as Clarence speaks. You sent for me, sir?
Yes, Clarence. A man down on Earth needs our help.
Splendid. Is he sick?
No, worse. He's discouraged. At exactly 10:45 p.m. tonight, Earth time, that man will be thinking seriously of throwing away God's greatest gift.
Oh, dear, his life? Then I've only got an hour to dress. What are they wearing now?
You will spend that hour getting acquainted with George Bailey.
Sir, if I should accomplish this mission, might I perhaps win my wings? I've been waiting for over 200 years now, sir, and people are beginning to talk.
What's that book you've got there?
The Adventures of Tom Sawyer.
Clarence, you do a good job with George Bailey, and you'll get your wings.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Poor George. Sit down.
Sit down? What are...
If you're going to help a man, you want to know something about him, don't you?
Well, naturally, of course.
Well, keep your eyes open. See the town?
The stars fade out from the screen, and a light, indistinguishable blur is seen. Where? I don't see a thing.
Oh, I forgot. You haven't got your wings yet. Now look, I'll help you out. Concentrate. Begin to see something?
The blur on the screen slowly begins to take form. We see a group of young boys on top of a snow-covered hill. Why, yes, this is amazing.
If you ever get your wings, you'll see all by yourself.
Oh, wonderful. Exterior frozen river and hill day, 1919. Close shot, group of boys. They are preparing to slide down the hill on large shovels. One of them makes the slide and shoots out onto the ice on a frozen river at the bottom of the hill. Hey, who's that?
That's your problem, George Bailey.
A boy?
That's him when he was 12, back in 1919. Something happens here you'll have to remember later on.
Series of shots as 4 or 5 boys make the slide down a hill and out onto the ice. Each boy comes down on the others applaud. Close shot, George Bailey at bottom of slide.
And here comes the scare baby, my kid brother, Harry Bailey.
Close shot, Harry on top of hill preparing to make his slide. I'm not scared.
Come on, Harry. Attaboy, Harry.
Medium shot. Harry makes his slide very fast. He passes the marks made by the other boys, and his shovel takes him onto the thin ice at the bend of the river. The ice breaks, and Harry disappears into the water.
I'm coming, Harry.
George jumps into the water and grabs Harry. As he starts to pull him out, he yells,
Make a chain, gang, a chain.
The other boys lie flat on the ice, forming a human chain. When George reaches the edge with Harry in his arms, they pull them both to safety.
George saved his brother's life that day, but he caught a bad cold which infected his left ear, cost him hearing in that ear. It was weeks before he could return to his after-school job at Old Man Gower's drugstore.
Dissolved to Main Street, Bedford Falls, spring afternoon. 5 or 6 boys are coming toward camera, arm in arm whistling. Their attention is drawn to an elaborate horse-drawn carriage proceeding down the other side of the street. The carriage driving by, we catch a glimpse of an elderly man riding in it. Boys are watching the carriage.
Mr. Potter.
Who's that? The king?
That's Henry F. Potter, the richest and meanest man in the county.
The boys continue until they reach Gower's drugstore. The drugstore is old-fashioned and dignified, with jars of colored water in the windows and little else. As the kids stop,
So long. Go to work,
go to
sweetie.
work.
Yeehaw.
Interior drugstore day. George comes in and crosses to an old-fashioned cigar lighter on the counter. He shuts his eyes and makes a wish.
I wish I had $1 million.
He clicks the lighter and the flame springs up.
Hot dog.
George crosses over to the soda fountain at which Mary Hatch, a small girl, is seated watching him. George goes on to get his apron from behind the fountain.
It's me, Mr. Gower, George Bailey.
Mr. Gower, the druggist, peering from the window in the back room. We see him take a drink from a bottle.
I'm late.
George behind a soda fountain. He is putting on his apron.
Yes, sir.
Violet Bick enters the drugstore and sits on one of the stools at the fountain. She is the same height as Mary and the same age, but she is infinitely older in her approach to people.
Hello, George. Hello, Mary.
Hello, Violet.
George regards the two of them with manly disgust. They are 2 kids to him and a nuisance. He starts over at the for the candy counter.
2 cents worth of shoelaces.
She was there first.
I'm still thinking.
Shoelaces.
Please, Georgie.
George goes over to the candy counter.
I like him.
You look like every boy.
What's wrong with that?
Here you are.
George gives Violet a paper sack containing licorice shoelaces. Violet gives him the money.
Help me down?
Help you down.
Violet jumps down off her stool and exits. Mary, watching, sticks out her tongue as she passes. George and Mary at the fountain.
Made up your mind yet?
I'll take chocolate.
George puts some chocolate ice cream in a dish.
Coconuts?
I don't like coconuts.
You don't like coconuts? Say, brainless, did you know where coconuts come from? Look at here, from Tahiti, Fiji Islands, Coral Sea.
He pulls a magazine from his pocket and shows it to her.
A new magazine? I never saw it before.
Of course you never. Only us explorers can get it. I've been nominated for membership in the National Geographic Society.
He leans down and finishes scooping out the ice cream, his deaf ear toward her. She leans over, speaking softly.
Is this the ear you kept hearing? George Bailey, I'll love you till the day I die.
She draws back quickly and looks down, terrified at what she has said.
I'm going out exploring someday. You watch. I'm going to have a couple of harems and maybe 3 or 4 wives. Wait and see.
He turns back to the cash register, whistling. Another angle, taking in the entrance to prescription room at the end of the fountain. Gower comes to the entrance. He is bleary-eyed, unshaven, chewing an old unlit cigar. His manner is gruff and mean. It is evident that he has been drinking.
George,
Yes, sir.
you're not paid to be a canary.
No, sir.
He turns back to the cash register when he notices an open telegram on the shelf. He's about to toss it aside when he starts to read it. It reads, "We regret to inform you that your son Robert died suddenly this morning of influenza. Stop. Everything possible was done for his comfort. Stop. We await instructions from you. Edward Mellington, President, Hammerton College." George puts the telegram down. A goodness of heart expresses itself in a desire to do something for Gower. He gives the ice cream to Mary without comment and slides back toward Gower. Close shot Gower, drunk, is intent on putting some capsules into a box.
Mr. Gower, do you want something? Anything?
No,
Anything to do back here?
no.
George looks curiously at Gower, realizing that he is quite drunk. Gower fumbles and drops some of the capsules to the floor. The capsules fall on the floor at their feet.
I'll get them, sir.
He picks up the capsules and puts them in the box. Gower waves George aside, takes his old wet cigar, shoves it in his mouth, and sits in an old Morris chair in the background. George turns the bottle around from which Gower has taken the powder for the capsules. Its label reads, "Poison." George stands still, horrified.
Take these capsules over to Mrs. Blaine's. She's waiting for them.
George picks up the capsule box, not knowing what to do or say. His eyes go, harassed, to the bottle labeled poison. George's fingers fumble.
Yes, sir. They have the diphtheria there, haven't they, sir?
Gower stares moodily ahead, sucking his cigar. George turns to him, the box in his hand.
Is it a charge, sir?
Yes, charge.
Mr. Gower, I think.
Oh, get going.
Yes, sir.
Interior drugstore day. George comes out into the main room. As he puts on his cap, he sees a sweet corporal's ad which says, "Ask Dad, he knows." Sweet corporal. With the inspiration, George dashes out the door and down the street. Mary follows him with her eyes. Exterior street day. George runs down the street until he comes opposite a 2-story building with a sign on it reading, "Bailey Building and Loan Association." He stops. Potter's carriage is waiting at the entrance. Suddenly, he runs up the stairs. Interior outer office and loan day, full shot. The offices are ancient and a bit on the rickety side. There is a counter with a grill, something like a bank. Before a door marked Peter Bailey Private, George's Uncle Billy stands, obviously trying to hear what's going on inside. He is a very good-humored man of about 50 in shirt sleeves. With him at the door, also listening, are cousin Tilly Bailey, a waspish-looking woman who is the telephone operator, and cousin Eustace Bailey, the clerk. The office vibrates with an aura of crisis as George enters and proceeds directly toward his father's office. Uncle Billy listening at the door. As George is about to enter his father's office, Uncle Billy grabs him by the arm. "Oh, ask there, Captain Cook. Where are you heading?"
I'll see Pop, Uncle Billy.
"Some other time, George.
It's important.
There's a squall in there that's shaping up into a storm." During the foregoing, cousin Tilly has answered the telephone, and now she calls out,
Uncle Billy, telephone.
"Who is it?"
Bank examiner.
Close up on Uncle Tilly's left hand. There are pieces of string tied around 2 of the fingers, obviously to remind him of things he has to do. Uncle Billy looking at his hand. "Bank examiner? Oh, I should have called him yesterday." Switch it inside. He enters a door marked William Bailey Private. George stands irresolute at the moment, aware of crisis in the affairs of the Bailey Building and Loans Association, but aware more keenly of his personal crisis. He opens the door of his father's office and enters. Interior office. George's father is seated behind his desk, nervously drawing swirl on a pad. He looks tired and worried. He's a gentleman in his 40s, an idealist, stubborn only for his other people's rights. Nearby, in a throne-like wheelchair, behind which stands the goon who furnishes the motive power, sits Henry F. Potter, his squarish derby hat on his head. The following dialogue is fast and heated, as though the argument had been in progress for some time.
I'm not crying, Mr. Potter.
Oh, you're begging, and that's a whole lot worse.
All I'm asking is 30 days more.
Pop!
Just a minute, son. Just 30 short days. I'll dig that up 5,000 somehow.
Shove me up.
Goon pushes his wheelchair closer to the desk.
Pop! Have you any real pressure on those people of yours to pay those mortgages?
Times are bad, Mr. Potter. A lot of these people are out of work.
Then foreclosure.
I can't do that. These families have children.
Pop! They're not my children.
But they're somebody's children.
Are you running a business or a charity ward?
Well, all right.
Not with my money.
Mr. Potter, what makes you such a hard-skulled character? You have no family, no children. You can't begin to spend all that money you've got.
So I suppose I should give it to miserable failures like you and that idiot brother of yours to spend it for me.
George cannot listen any longer to such libel about his father. He comes around in front of the desk.
He's not a failure. You can't say that about my father.
George,
You're not. You're the biggest man in town.
run along.
He pushes George toward the door.
Bigger than him.
As George passes Potter's wheelchair, he pushes the old man's shoulder. The goon puts out a restraining hand.
Bigger than everybody.
George proceeds toward the door with his father's hand on his shoulder. As they go,
An idea of the Bailey.
interior office building, George and his father at the door.
Don't let him say that about you, Pop.
All right, son. Talk to you tonight.
Bailey closes the door on George and turns back to Potter. George stands outside the door with the capsules in his hand. Back to the drugstore. Close shot. Gower talking on the phone. George stands in the doorway.
Why that medicine should have been there an hour ago. It'll be over in 5 minutes, Mrs. Blaine. Where's
Hangs
Mrs.
up the phone and turns to George.
Where's Mrs. Blaine's box of capsules?
He grabs George by the shirt and drags him into the back room.
Capsules?
Did you hear what I said?
Yes, sir.
Gower starts hitting George about the head with his open hand. George tries to protect himself the best he can.
What kind of tricks are you playing anyway? Why didn't you deliver them right away? Don't you know that the boy's very sick?
You're hurting my sore ear.
Interior front room drugstore. Mary is still seated at the soda fountain. Each time she hears George being slapped, she winces. Close shot George and Gower.
You lazy loafer.
Mr. Gower, you don't know what you're doing. You put something wrong in those capsules. I know you're unhappy. You got that telegram and you're upset. You put something bad in those capsules. It wasn't your fault, Mr. Gower.
George pulls the little box out of his pocket. Gower savagely rips it away from him, breathing heavily, staring at the boy venomously.
Just look and see what you did. Look at the ball you took the powder from. It's poison. I tell you, it's poison. I know you feel bad and...
George falters off, cupping his aching ear with a hand. Gower looks at the large brown bottle which has not been replaced on the shelf. He tears open the package, shakes the powder out of one of the capsules, cautiously tastes it, then abruptly throws the whole mess onto the table and turns to look at George again. The boy is whimpering, hurt, frightened. Gower steps toward him.
Don't hear my sore ear again.
But this time, Gower sweeps the boy up to him in a hug and, sobbing hoarsely, crushes the boy in his embrace. George is crying too.
No.
Don't hurt my ear again.
Oh, George.
Mr. Gower, I won't ever tell anyone. I know what you're feeling. I don't want to ever tell a soul. Hope to die, I won't.
Oh, George.
Interior luggage shop day. It is late afternoon. A young man is looking over an assortment of luggage. Across the counter stands Joe Hepner, the proprietor of the store. He is showing a suitcase.
An overnight bag, genuine English cowhide, combination lock, fitted up with brushes, combs.
Nope.
As camera moves up closer to him, he turns and we get our first glimpse of George as a young man. Camera has moved up to a close-up by now.
Oh, no. Now look, Joe. Now look. I want a big one.
Suddenly, in action, as George stands with his arms outstretched in illustration, the picture freezes and becomes a still. Over this hold frame shot, we hear the voices from heaven.
What did you stop it for?
I want you to take a good look at that face.
Who is it?
George Bailey.
Oh, you mean the kid that had his ears slapped back by the druggist?
That's the kid.
It's a good face. I like it. I like George Bailey. Tell me, did he ever tell anyone about the pills?
Not a soul.
Did he ever marry the girl? Did he ever go exploring?
Well, wait and see.
The arrested close-up of George springs to life again.
Big, see, I don't want one for one night. I want some 4,000 one nights. We're playing room for labels from Italy and Baghdad, Samarkand, and a great big one.
I see, a flying carpet, huh? I don't suppose you'd like this old second-hand job, would you?
He brings a large suitcase up from under the counter.
Now you're talking. Chicken whiz. I'd use this as a wrap in case of the boat sunk. How much does this cost?
No charge.
That's my trick here, Joe. Sounded as he said no charge.
That's right.
What's my name doing on it?
A little present from old man Gower. Came down and picked it out himself.
He did? What do you know about that? My old boss.
What boat you sailing on?
I'm working across on a cattle boat.
A cattle boat?
Okay, I like cows.
Interior Gower's drugstore day. The place is practically the same, except that it is now full of school kids having sodas, etc. A jukebox and many little tables have been added. It has become the hangout of the local small fry. There are now 3 kids jerking sodas. Gower is a different man now, sober, shaven, and good-humored. He is behind the counter when George comes in. Gower's face lights up when he sees George.
Mr. Gower, thank you ever so much for the bag. It's just exactly what I wanted.
Ah, forget it.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Hope you enjoy it.
George suddenly sees the old cigar lighter on the counter. He closes his eyes and makes a wish.
Oh, I wish I had $1 million.
And as he snaps, the lighter flame springs up.
Hot dog.
George shakes Gower's hand vigorously and exits. Exterior Main Street, Bedford Falls. Hand shot as George crosses the street. Uncle Billy, Cousin Billy, and Cousin Eunice are leaning out of the second floor window of the building and loan office. Avast there, Captain Cook. You got your sea legs yet?
Parlez-vous français? Hey, send us some of them postcards, will you, George?
Hey, George, don't take any plugged nickels.
Hey, George, your suitcase is leaking.
George waves up at them and continues on across the street. Medium shot day. As George crosses the street, he spots Ernie and his cab, and Bert, the motor car cop, parked alongside.
Hey, Ernie.
Hiya, George.
Hi, Bert. Ernie, I'm a rich tourist today. How about driving me home in style?
Bert opens the door of the cab and puts George's suitcase inside.
Sure, Your Highness, hop in. And for the carriage trade, I puts on my hat.
As George is about to enter the cab, he suddenly stops as he sees Violet, now obviously a little sex machine, come toward him. Her walk and figure would stop anybody. She gives him a sultry look. Reverse angle, the 3 men in the cab, but including Violet.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bailey.
Hello, Violet. Hey, you look good. Some dress you got on there.
She reacts to this.
Oh, this old thing? Why, I only wear it when I don't care how I look.
Camera pans with Violet as she swings on down the sidewalk. As Violet goes by, George and Bert raise their heads above the top of the cab. On Violet's back as she crosses the street, an elderly man turns to look at her and is almost hit by a car that pulls up with screeching brakes. Ernie sticks his head out from the driver's seat.
How would you like?
Yes.
You want to come along, Bert? We'll show you the town.
Bert looks at his watch, then takes another look at Violet's retreating figure.
No thanks. I'll go home and see what the wife's doing.
Family man.
Dissolved to Bailey dining room night. Pop Bailey is seated at the dinner table. Mrs. Bailey and Annie, the cook, look up toward the vibrating ceiling. There are sounds of terrific banging and scuffing upstairs. Annie pounds on the ceiling with a broom.
George, Harry, you're shaking the house down. Stop it.
Oh, let him alone. I wish I was up there with him.
Harry will tear his dinner suit. George!
Mrs. Bailey is calling up the stairs.
That's why all children should be girls.
But if they were all girls, there wouldn't be any. Oh, never mind. George, Harry, come down to dinner this minute. Everything's getting cold and you know we've been waiting for you.
Okay, Mom.
She goes up the stairs. Pop is smiling and poking his plate. A commotion is heard on the stairs, the boys imitating fanfare music. Down they come, holding their mother high between them on their hands. They bring her into the dining room and deposit her gracefully into Pop's lap.
Here's a present to you, Pop.
Pop kisses her. Mother gives Pop a quick hug, then turns with all the wrath she can muster to the boys.
Oh, you two idiots. George, sit down and have dinner.
Oh, I've eaten.
Well, aren't you going to finish dressing for your graduation party? Look at you.
I don't care. It's George's tux. Annie crosses the room, holding her broom. Harry reaches out for her.
If you lay a hand on me, I'll hit you with this broom.
Annie, I'm in love with you. There's a moon out tonight. As he pushes her through the kitchen door, he slaps her fanny. She screams. The noise is cut off by a swinging door. George and his mother sit down at the table.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. My last meal in the Old Bailey boarding house.
Oh, my lands, my blood pressure.
Harry as he sticks his head through the kitchen door. Oh. Pop, can I have the car? I'm going to take over a lot of plates and things.
What plates?
Oh, Mom, the chairman of the Eats Committee, and we only need a couple of dozen.
Oh, no, you don't, Harry. Now, not my best Haveland.
She follows Harry into the kitchen, leaving Pop and George. As she goes,
Oh, let him have the plates, Mother.
George and his father eating at the table. There is a great similarity and a great understanding between them.
Hope you have a good trip, George. Uncle Billy and I are going to miss you.
I'm going to miss you too, Pop. What's the matter? I'm tired.
Oh, I had another tussle with Potter today.
Oh,
Thought when we put him on the board of directors, he'd ease up on us a little bit.
where is he, that old money grubbing buzzard anyway?
Oh, he's a sick man. Frustrated and sick. Sick in his head, sick in his soul, if he has one. Hates everybody that has anything that he can't have. Hates us mostly, I guess.
The dining room. Harry and his mother come out of the kitchen. Harry carrying a pie in each hand and balancing one on his head. Gangway, gangway, so long, Pop.
So long, son.
On a Mac?
Very funny, very funny.
Put those things in the car and I'll get your tie and studs together.
Okay, Mom. You coming later? You coming later, George?
What do you mean? To be bored to death?
Couldn't want a better death. Lots of pretty girls, and we're going to use that new floor of yours tonight, too.
Overworked.
No gin tonight.
Aw, Pop, just a little.
No, son, not one drip.
George and Pop at the table. Annie comes in with some dishes.
Boys and girls and music. Why do they need gin?
She exits.
Potter, did I act like that when I graduated from high school?
Pretty much. You know, George, wish we could send Harry to college with you. Your mother and I talked it over half the night.
Well, we have that all figured out. You see, Harry will take my job at the building alone. Work there 4 years, and then he'll go.
He's pretty young from that job.
A little younger than I was.
Maybe you were born older, George.
How's that?
I say, maybe you were born older. I suppose you've decided what you're going to do when you get out of college.
Oh, well, you know, when I've always talked about build things, design new buildings, plan modern cities, all that stuff I'm talking about.
Still after that first million before you're 30.
No, also for half of that tax.
Annie comes in again from the kitchen.
Of course, it's just a hope, but you wouldn't consider coming back to the building alone, would you?
Annie stops serving to hear his answer.
Well, what? Annie, why don't you drop a chair and you'd be more comfortable and you can hear everything that's going on?
I would if I thought I'd hear anything worth listening to.
You would, huh?
She gives George a look and goes out to the kitchen. Bailey smiles and turns to George.
I know it's too soon to talk about it.
Oh, now, Pop, I couldn't face being cooped up for the rest of my life in a shabby little office.
He stops, realizing that he's hurt his father.
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that, Mark. First business of nickels and dimes spend all your life trying to figure out how to save 3 cents on a night. I go crazy. All things are big. Something important.
You know, George, I feel that in a small way, we are doing something important, satisfying a fundamental urge. It's deep in the race for a man to want his own roof and walls and fireplace, and we're helping him get through these things in our shabby little office.
I know, Dad. I wish I've been 40 days like a miser in order to. Well, my friends already finished college. I just feel like if I don't get away, I'd bust.
Yes, you're right, son.
You know what I mean? Don't you?
This town is no place for any man unless he's willing to crawl to Potter. You've got talent, son. Got yourself an education, then go on and get out of here.
Pop, you want a shot? I think you're a great guy.
To cover his embarrassment, he looks toward the kitchen door and calls.
Oh, did you hear that, Annie?
Annie listening through the glass door.
I heard it. About time one of you lunkheads said it.
Oh, George and his father at the table.
I'm going to miss old Annie. Pop, I think I'll get dressed and go over to Harris Park.
Have a good time, son.
Interior high school gym night. At one end of the room, an orchestra is playing. George wends his way through the dancing couples toward the supper table. He and Harry are carrying plates and pies.
There you are.
Several of the boys take the plates from him. George looks at them, feeling very grown up and out of place. You know my kid brother, George? I'm going to put him through college. Sam Wainwright comes in behind Harry, waggles his hand at his ears while he talks.
Here comes George. Hello, hee-haw.
George swings around, delighted to hear a familiar voice, including Sam and Marty Hatch. Sam is assured and breezy, wearing very collegiate clothes.
Oh, Sam Wainwright, how are you? When did you get here?
Oh, this afternoon. I thought I'd give the kids a treat.
Old college graduate now, huh?
Yeah, old Joe College Wainwright. They call me, well, freshman. Looks like you're going to make it after all.
Yep.
Sam sees Harry and leaves George in the middle of the gesture.
Harry, you're the guy I want to see. Coach has heard all about you.
He has?
Yeah, he has. He's followed every game and his mouth is watering. He wants to find out if you're going to come along with us.
Oh, well, I got to make some dough first.
Well, you better make it fast. We need great ends like you, not broken down old guys like this one.
George and Sam wiggle their fingers at their ears, saluting each other.
Yeah.
An elderly, fussy school principal comes over to George.
George, welcome back.
Hello, Mr. Partridge. How are you?
Putting a pool under this floor is a great idea. Saved us another building. Now, Harry, Sam, have a lot of fun. There's lots of stuff to eat and drink, lots of pretty girls around.
Violet Bick comes into the scene and turns to face George. She is waving her dance program at him.
Hey, George.
Hello, Violet.
Hello. What am I, a bid?
Marty Hatch enters the scene.
Hey, George. Hello, Violet.
Was old home week.
And do me a favor, will you, George?
What's that?
Well, you remember my kid's sister, Mary.
Oh, yeah.
Mama wants you, Marty. Mama wants you, Marty, remember?
Dance with her, will you?
Oh, me? Oh, well, I feel funny enough already with all these chicks.
Oh, come on, be a sport. Just dance with her one time, and you'll give her the thrill of her life.
Aw, go on.
Hey, sis.
Oh, excuse me, Violet. Don't be long. Marty. I don't want to be a wet nurse.
He suddenly stops as he sees Mary staring at her. She is standing talking to one of the boys, Freddie, a glass of punch in her hand. For the first time, she is wearing an evening gown, and she has gained assurance from the admiration of the boy with her. She turns around and for the first time she sees George. For a second, she loses her poise, staring at him.
Next thing I know, some guy came up and tripped me. That's the reason why I came in fourth. If it hadn't been for that
George staring at Mary.
that race would have been a cinch. I tried to find out who it was later,
Still staring at George and smiling.
but I couldn't find out. Nobody'd ever tell you whoever it was because they'd be scared. They know.
Mary and Freddie. Marty comes into scene, followed by George.
What kind of?
You remember George? This is Mary. Well, I'll be seeing you.
Well.
Now to get back to my story, see,
Mary hands her punch cup to Freddie, and she and George start dancing.
hey, this is my dance.
Oh, why did you stop annoying people?
Well, I'm sorry. Hey,
Following George and Mary as they dance.
Well, hello.
Hello. You look at me as if you didn't know me.
Well, I don't.
You pass me on the street almost every day.
Me?
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. That was a little girl named Mary Hatch. That wasn't you.
A whistle is heard off screen and the music stops. Harry on the orchestra platform, whistle in hand. Oys, the big Charleston contest. The prize, a genuine loving cup. Those not tapped by the judges will remain on the floor. Let's go. As music starts, the couples begin dancing once more. They look at each other.
I'm not very good at this.
Neither am I.
Okay, what can we lose?
They start their Charleston. We see a series of shots of various couples doing their routines, some good, some bad. Close up on Freddie leaning against the railing around the dance floor, looking daggers at George. Mickey, a young punk who has had one too many, is beside him.
What's the matter, Othello? Jealous? Did you know that there's a swimming pool under this floor? And did you know that button behind you causes this floor to open up? And did you further know that George Bailey is dancing right over that crack? And I've got the key?
Freddie needs no more. He takes the key from Mickey and turns the switch. The floor begins to part in the middle, each half sliding under the bleacher seats. Pandemonium starts. Dancers begin to scream as they try to get off. Some are so engrossed in dancing, they continue at top speed. Teachers and elders start to scurry off. As the floor opens, it reveals an attractive lighted swimming pool. George and Mary are so busy dancing, they don't notice the floor opening. Spotlights concentrate on them. They mistake the screams for cheers. George and Mary dancing.
You're cheering us. You must be good.
The crowd watching George and Mary dancing. They move backwards until finally they reach the edge of the floor and fall into the pool below. George and Mary still trying to dance in the water. The crowd on the edge cheering them. Some of the crowd leap into the pool. The principal, trying to restore order, finally claps his hands like a diver and leaps in himself. Exterior tree-lined residential street night. George and Mary. The night is warm and a bright moon. George is dressed in jersey sweater and oversized football pants that keep wanting to come down. Mary is in an old white bathrobe. Each is carrying their wet clothes tied into a bundle that leaves a trail of dripping water. As they near the camera, we hear them singing.
Buffalo girls, can't you come out tonight? Can't you come out tonight? Can't you come out tonight? Buffalo girls, can't you come out tonight and dance by the light of the moon?
Hot dog, just like an orange.
Beautiful.
Camera moves with them as they proceed down the street.
And I told Harry I thought he'd bored to death. You should have seen the commotion in that locker room. I had to knock down 3 people to get this stuff we're wearing here. Here, let me hold the whole wet dress.
He takes the bundle of clothes from Mary. They stop and look at each other.
Do I look as funny as you do?
Guess I'm not quite the football type. You look wonderful, you know? It wasn't me talking. I say you're the prettiest girl in town.
Well, why don't you say it?
I don't know. Yeah, I will say it. How old are you, Ernie?
18.
18? I was only last year. You were 17.
Too young or too old?
Oh, no, just right. Your age 50. Yes, sir, you look like a little older without your clothes on.
Mary stops. George, to cover his embarrassment, talks quickly on.
I mean without a dress. You look older. I mean younger. You look just...
In his confusion, George steps on the end of the belt of Mary's bathrobe, which is trailing along behind her. She gathers the robe around her.
Oh,
Sir, my train, please.
pox up on me for my clumsy lap.
He picks up the belt and throws it over her arm.
Your caboose, my lady.
You may kiss my hand.
Holding her hand, George moves in closer to Mary.
Hey, Mary?
Mary turns away from him, singing Buffalo Gals.
Well, I was lumbering down the street.
George looks after her, then picks up a rock from the street.
Okay then. A little rock in the old Randall.
Oh, no, don't. I love that old house.
Old house. It is a weather-beaten, old-fashioned two-storied house that once was no doubt resplendent.
No, you see, you make a wish and then try and break some glass. You're a pretty good shot nowadays, too.
Sorry.
Close up on George and Mary.
Oh, no, George, don't. It's full of romance, that old place. I'd like to live in it.
That place?
Uh-huh.
I will live in it as a ghost. Now watch. Around Singapore.
Medium shot on the old house. George hurls the rock at the house. We hear the sound of a window breaking. Front porch of the house, we see a grumpy old man in shirt sleeves in a rocking chair on the porch. He looks up as he hears the breaking glass. George and Mary.
What'd you wish, George?
Well, just one wish. Oh, apple, Mary. I know what I'm going to do tomorrow, next day, and next year, and the next year after that. I'm shaking dust of this crummy little town off my feet. I'm going to see the world, Italy, Greece, Partridge, the Colosseum. I'm coming back here and go to college and see what they know, and I'm going to build things. I'm going to build airfields. I'm going to build skyscrapers 100 stories high. I'm going to build bridges a mile long.
As he talks, Mary's been listening intently. She finally stoops down and picks up a rock, weighing it in her hand.
Are you going to throw a rock?
The old deserted house. Mary throws her rock, and once more we hear the sound of breaking glass.
Hey, it's pretty good. What's your wish, Mary?
Mary looks at him provocatively, then turns and shuffles off down the street, singing as she goes. George hurries after her.
Buffalo gals, can't you come out tonight? Can't you come out tonight? Can't you come out tonight? Buffalo gals, can't you come out tonight and dance by the light of the moon?
What did you wish you threw that rock?
Close shot on the man of the house, porch of the house, listening to George and Mary. Close up on George and Mary. They have stopped walking and now face one another.
Oh, no.
Come on, tell me.
If I told you, it might not come true.
What does he want, Mary? What do you want? What do you want, the moon? Just say the word, I'll throw a lasso
Long
around.
shot on the full moon shining through the trees.
Say the word, I'll throw a lasso around and pull it down. Hey, that's a pretty good idea. I'll give you the moon, Mary.
I'll take it. And then what?
Well, then you go small it and all is off, see? And the moonbeams will shoot out of your fingers and your toes and the ends of your hair. Am I talking too much?
Close up on man on the porch house. As George finishes talking, the man jumps out of his chair.
Yes! Why don't you kiss her instead of talking her to death?
How's that?
Why don't you kiss her instead of talking her to death?
Want me to kiss her, huh?
Ah, youth is wasted on the wrong people.
As he speaks, the man leaves the porch and goes into his house, slamming the front door.
Hey, hold on. Hey, mister, come on back out here. I'll show you some kissing and I'll put hair back on your head. What are you?
Mary runs off scene. George has been once more standing on the belt of her bathrobe, so as she goes, her robe comes off.
Mary?
He drops his bundle of clothes and picks up Mary's robe. He cannot see her anywhere.
Okay, I give up. Worry.
Close up on bush at edge of sidewalk. We see Mary's face peering out from the leaves.
Over here, and the hydrangea leaves.
George walks toward the bush.
There you are. Check.
He is about to throw her the robe when a thought strikes him.
Wait a minute. What am I doing? It's a very interesting situation.
Please give me my robe.
A man can get in a situation like this every day.
I'd like to have my robe.
Not in Bedford Falls, anyway.
Mary thrashes around in the bushes. We hear her say,
Ouch!
Good time. Requires a little
George Bailey, give me my robe.
I've heard about things like this, but I never.
Shame on you. I'm going to tell your mother on you.
Oh, my mother's way up the corner there.
I'll call the police.
They're way downtown. They'd be on my side, too.
I'm going to scream.
Back his own tickets. Let's see. Now, the point is, in order to get this robe, I've got it. I'll make a deal with you, Mary.
Headlights flash onto the scene, and the old Bailey automobile drives in with Harry at the wheel and Uncle Billy beside him. George! George, come on home, quick! Your father's had a stroke. George throws Mary's robe over the bush and gets into the car.
Mary, I'm sorry. I've got to go.
Come on, George, let's hurry.
Get a doctor?
Yes, Campbell's there now. Close up the hydrangea bush. As the car drives off, Mary, now wearing the robe, rises up from the bush and follows the car with her eyes. Exterior, Bailey Building and Loan sign over entrance. Interior of the building. There are about 12 directors seated around a long table. They are the substantial citizens of Bedford Falls. Dr. Campbell, a lawyer, an insurance agent, a real estate salesman, etc. Prominently seated among them is Henry F. Potter, his goon beside his wheelchair. Uncle Billy and George are seated among the directors. The chairman of the board is Dr. Campbell. They have folders and papers before them on which they have been reporting. Before each of the directors, there are individual reports for them to study.
I think that's all we need you for, George. I know you're anxious to make a train.
I have a taxi waiting downstairs.
I want the board to know that George gave up his trip to Europe to help straighten things out here these past few months. Good luck to you at school, George.
Thanks.
Now we come to the real purpose of this meeting, to appoint a successor to our dear friend, Peter Bailey.
Chairman, I'd like to get to my real purpose.
Wait just a minute now.
Wait for what? I claim this institution is not necessary to this town. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, I have a motion to dissolve this institution and turn its assets and liabilities over to the receiver.
George, you hear what that buzzard?
Mr. Chairman, it's too soon after Peter Bailey's death to discuss chloroforming the billing and loan. Peter Bailey died 3 months ago. Second Mr. Potter's motion.
Very well. In that case, I'll ask the two executive officers to withdraw.
Dr. Campbell rises from his seat. George and Uncle Billy start to collect their papers and leave the table.
But before you go, I'm sure the whole board wishes to express its deep sorrow at the passing of Peter Bailey.
Thank you very much.
It was his faith and devotion that are responsible for this organization.
I'll go further than that. I'll say that to the public. Peter Bailey was the building and loan.
Everyone looks at him surprised. Oh, that's fine, Potter. Coming from you, considering that you probably drove him to his grave.
Peter Bailey was not a businessman. That's what killed him. Oh, I don't mean any disrespect to him, God rest his soul. He was a man of high ideals, so-called, but ideals without common sense can ruin this town. Now, you take this loan here to Ernie Bishop. You know, that fellow that sits around all day with his brains in his taxi. You know, I happen to know the bank turned down this loan, but he comes here and we're building him a house worth $5,000. Why?
George is at the door of the office, holding his coat and papers, ready to leave.
I handle that, Mr. Potter. I have all the papers there. His salary, insurance. I can personally vouch for his character.
Friend of yours?
Yes, sir.
You see, if you shoot pool with some employee here, you can come and borrow money. What does that get us? A discontented, lazy rabble instead of a thrifty working class. And all because a few starry-eyed dreamers like Peter Bailey stir them up and fill their heads with a lot of impossible ideas. Now, I say.
George puts down his coat and comes around the table, incensed by what Potter has said about his father.
Just a minute. Now, hold on, Mr. Potter. You're right when you say my father has no businessman. I know that. Why he ever started this cheap penny antique building and loan, I'll never know. But neither you nor nobody else can say anything against his character. His whole life was, in the 25 years since he and Uncle Billy started this thing, he never once thought of himself. Is that right, Uncle Billy? He didn't save enough money to send Harry to school, let alone me, but you did help a few people get out of your slough, Mr. Potter. And what's wrong with that? Why, you're all businessmen here. Doesn't that make them better citizens? Doesn't that make them better customers? You said that what you said just a minute ago. They had to wait and save their money before they even ought to think of a decent home. Wait, for what? Until their children grow up and leave them? Until they're all so old and broken down? Do you know how long does it take a working man to save $5,000? Just remember this, Mr. Potter. This rabble you're talking about, they do most of the working and paying and living, dying in this community. Well, is it too much having to work and pay live and die in a couple of decent rooms and a bath? Anyway, my father didn't think so. People are human beings, sir. But to you, a war-frustrated old man, are cattle. Well, in my book, he died a much richer man than he'll ever be.
I'm not interested in your book. I'm talking about the building and loan.
I know very well what you're talking about. You're talking about something you can't get your fingers on, and that's gallling you. That's what you're talking about, I know. Well, I've said too much. You're the board here. You know what you want with this thing. Just one thing more. No, this town needs this immediately one-horse institution, if only to have some place where people can come without crawling to Potter. Come on, Uncle Billy.
George leaves the room, followed by his jubilant Uncle Billy. Potter's face is grim with hatred. The frustrated old man remark was gall in his veins.
Sentimental hogwash! I want my motion.
He is interrupted by a babble of talk as the directors take up the argument. Interior outer office building and loan. George, visibly shaken, is busy with his bag, his papers. He is worried about the outcome of the meeting. Dissolving the building and loan will alter his plans. Uncle Billy follows him around, chattering. Boy, oh boy, that was telling him, George, old boy. You shut his big mouth. Oh, you should have heard him.
What happened? We heard a lot of yelling.
Well, we're being voted out of business after 25 years. Easy come, easy go.
Here it is. Help wanted female.
Medium close shot, doorway to office. Ernie is on the doorway.
Don't want me to hang around, George?
Yeah, I'll be right down.
Hey, you'll miss your train. You're a week late for school already. Go on.
What was going on there?
Oh, never mind. Don't worry about that. They're putting us out of business. So what? I can get another job. I'm only 55.
$56.
Go
56.
on. Hey, look, I gave up your boat. You gave up your boat trip. Now you don't want to miss college too, do you? Dr. Campbell comes running out, all excited.
George! They voted Potter down. They want to keep it going.
Cousin Eustace, Cousin Tilly, and Uncle Billy cheer wildly. Dr. Campbell and George shake hands. Whoopee!
But they've got one condition. Only one condition.
What's that?
Well, that's the best part of it. They've appointed George here as executive secretary to take his father's place.
Oh, no, but Uncle Billy.
You can keep him on. That's all right. As secretary, you can hire anyone you like.
Dr. Campbell, now, let's get this thing straight. I'm leaving right now. I'm going to school. It's my last chance. Uncle Billy here, he's your man.
But George, they'll vote with Potter otherwise.
Exterior sky night. The same stars we saw in the opening sequence are here once more, twinkling as we hear the voices from heaven.
I know. He didn't go.
That's right. Not only that, but he gave his school money to his brother Harry and sent him to college. Harry became a football star, made second team All-American.
Yes, but what happened to George?
Exterior railroad station, day, 4 years later. Characteristic activity, a number of people waiting for the train. Uncle Billy is seated on a baggage wagon, eating peanuts as George paces up and down in front of him.
George got 4 years older, waiting for Harry to come back and take over the building and loan.
What a plane dropped around for somebody that likes to travel. Look at this. There. Venezuela oil fields. Wanted. Man with construction experience. Here's the Yukon right here. Wanted. Man with engineering experience.
The whistle of an approaching train is heard.
There she blows. You know what the three most exciting sounds in the world are?
Uh-huh. Breakfast is served. Lunch is served. Dinner.
Oh, no. Anchor chains, plane motors, and train whistles.
Peanut. Exterior train shot, medium shot, day. The train comes to a stop, and Harry is among the first to get off, followed by an attractive girl about the same age as he is. George rushes into the shot as the brothers embrace.
There's a professor now, old professor. Phi Beta Kappa Bailey, all American.
Well, if it isn't old George Geographic Explorer Bailey. What? No husky dogs? No sled? Uncle Billy, you haven't changed a bit. Yeah, nobody ever changes around here. You know that.
Oh, am I glad to see you.
Say, where's Mother?
She's all looking to fat a calf. Come on, let's go.
Oh, wait a minute. The group, including Ruth Dakin, this is the young lady who came off the train with Harry. In the excitement of greeting, she has been momentarily forgotten. She stands smiling, waiting.
Hello.
How do you do? Ruth Dakin. Ruth Dakin.
We're taking Bailey if you don't mind.
George and Uncle Billy stare astounded. Huh? Well, I wired you. I had a surprise. Here she is. Meet the wife. George is thunderstruck. He takes Ruth's hand. Well, what do you know? Wife.
Well, how do you do? Congratulations. Congratulations. What am I doing?
He kisses Ruth. Camera moves with them down the platform.
Harry, why'd you tell somebody? What's a pretty girl like you doing marrying this two-headed brother of mine?
Well, I'll tell you, it's purely mercenary. My father offered him a job.
George stops with a sinking feeling. Uncle Billy and Ruth continue out of shot. Harry stops with George. Oh, he gets you and a job. Well, Harry's cup runneth over. George, about that job, Ruth spoke out of turn. I never said I'd take it. You've been holding the bag here for 4 years, and well, I won't let you down, George. I would like to. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot the bags. I'll be right back. He runs out of the shot, George watching him. Close shot on George, slowly moving after Uncle Billy and Ruth. He is thinking deeply. It was a surprise to me. This is the new Mrs. Bailey, my nephew's wife, old friend of the family.
Oh, of course. I've heard him speak of you.
And I want to tell you, we're going to give the biggest party this town ever saw. Camera moves with George as he comes into the scene. Ruth detaches herself from the group and offers George some popcorn.
Here, have some popcorn. George. That's all Harry ever talks about.
Ruth, what about this job?
Oh, well, my father owns a glass factory in Buffalo, and he wants to get Harry started in the research business.
Is it a good job?
Well, yeah, it's very. Not much money, but a good future, you know. Harry's a genius at research, and my father fell in love with him.
And you did too.
Mm-hmm.
Ruth nods, smiling. Exterior front porch Bailey home, night. Cousin Eustace is taking a photograph of the family group assembled on the porch. Flash bulbs go off and the group breaks up. The crowd enters the front door of the house, leaving George and Uncle Billy on the porch. The latter is tipsy. He feels very high. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I feel so good. I could spit in Potter's eye. I think I will. What did you say, huh? Maybe I'd better go home. He looks around for his hat, which is on his head. Where is my hat? George takes the hat from Uncle Billy's head and hands it to him. Oh, thank you, George. Oh, which one is mine?
Middle one.
Oh, thank you, George. Oh boy, oh boy. Now look, if you'll point me in the right direction, would you do that, George?
Right down here.
They descend the porch steps and George turns his uncle around and heads him down the street. Oh, building alone, pal, huh?
Now you just turn this way and go right straight down.
That way, huh? He staggers out of the scene, and as George turns away, we hear Uncle Billy singing My Wild Irish Rose. There's a crash of cans and bottles, and I'm all right, the sweetest flower that grows. Exterior house night. George is standing at the garden gate. He takes some travel folders from his pocket, looks at them, and throws them away. He is obviously disturbed about the latest turn of events. His mother comes out of the house and kisses him.
Oh, Mom.
That's for nothing. How do you like her?
She nods toward the house, where Harry and Ruth, among a crowd of other couples, are dancing to the music of a phonograph and can be seen through the front door.
Well,
Looks like she can keep Harry on his toes.
Keep on at Bedford Falls anyway.
You know that Mary Hatch is back from school.
Uh-huh.
Came back 3 days ago.
Hmm.
Nice girl, Mary.
Hmm.
Kind that'll help you find the answers, George.
Hmm.
Oh, stop that grunting. Can you give me one reason why you shouldn't call on Mary?
Sure. Sam Wainwright.
Hmm?
Yeah, Sam's crazy about Mary.
Well, she's not crazy about him.
Well, how do you know? Did she discuss it with you?
No.
Well, then how do you know?
Well, I've got eyes, haven't I? Why, she lights up like a firefly whenever you're around.
Oh.
And besides, Sam Wainwright's away in New York, and you're here in Bedford Falls.
All's fair in love and war.
I don't know about war.
Mother, I can see right through you. Right back to your back collarbone. Trying to get rid of me, huh?
Mm-hmm.
They kiss. Mrs. Bailey puts George's hat on his head.
Well, here's your hat. What's your hurry? All right, mother, old Biddy alone, pal. I think I'll go out and find a girl and do a little passionate next.
Oh, George.
Now, if you just point me in the right direction, this direction. Good night, Mrs. Bailey.
Exterior Main Street, Bedford Falls, night. George is standing in the middle of the street, hands in his pockets. As the girl passes, he turns and watches her for a moment. He is obviously undecided as to what he wants to do. Exterior Violet Bick's Beauty Shop, night. Violet is locking up for the night. A couple of men are crowding around her, each one bent on taking her out. There is laughter, kidding, and pawing. She looks up and sees George standing there.
Excuse me.
Now, wait a minute.
I think I got a date, but stick around, fellows, just in case, huh?
We'll wait for you, baby.
Camera pans with Violet as she crosses the street to George.
Hello, Georgie Porgy.
Hello, Var.
He looks her over. Violet takes her beauty shop seriously, and she's an eyeful. She senses the fact that George is far from immune to her attractions. She links her arm in with his and continues on down the street with him.
What gives?
Nothing.
Where are you going?
Well, I'll probably end up down to the library.
They stop walking and face one another.
George, don't you ever get tired of just reading about things?
Her eyes are seductive and guileful as she looks up at him. He is silent for a moment, then blurts out,
Yeah. What are you doing tonight?
Not a thing.
Are we getting thing? Let's make a night out of it.
Oh, I'd love it, Georgie. What'll we do?
Let's go on the fields and take off our shoes and walk through the grass.
Huh?
We can go up to the falls. It's beautiful up there in the moonlight. There's a swimming pool up there, and we can swim in it. We can climb Mount Bedford and smell the pines and watch sunrise against the peaks. And we'll stay up there the whole night. Everybody will be talking, and there'll be a terrific skit.
George, have you gone crazy? Walk in the grass with my bare feet? Why, it's 10 miles up to Mount Bedford. You think just because you...
By this time, a small crowd is collected to watch the above scene. Violet is furious and talking in a loud voice, and George is trying to quiet her. Finally,
Okay, just forget about the whole thing.
as George stalks off, the crowd breaks into laughter, and we wipe to the exterior residential street night. George is walking slowly past the Hatch home. He stares meditatively at the simple dwelling. Then he starts walking ahead, but after a few steps, he turns around and starts back. He walks past the house a few yards, turns, starts back again. Interior bedroom window, Hatch home, night. Mary is looking out the window, watching George walk back and forth.
What are you doing? Picketing?
George stops, startled, and looks up.
Hello, Mary. I just happened to be passing by.
Yeah, so I noticed. Have you made up your mind?
How's that?
Have you made up your mind?
About what?
About coming in. Your mother just phoned and said you were on your way over to pay me a visit.
George looks a little surprised at this.
My mother just... I'll see you.
Didn't you tell her?
I didn't tell anybody. I just went for a walk and happened to be passing by.
But Mary has disappeared from the window.
What do you... Went for a walk, that's all.
Interior Hatch home night. Medium close shot. Mary is running down the stairs.
I'll be downstairs, Mother.
All right, dear.
Mary looks in a mirror at the bottom of the stairs and fixes her hair. She is plainly excited at George's visit. She runs into the parlor and puts a sketch on an easel. Insert the sketch. It is a caricature of George throwing a lasso around the moon. Lettering on the drawing says, George lassos the moon. Mary runs into the hall, opens the phonograph, and puts on a record of Buffalo Gals. Then she opens the front door and stands there waiting for George. George is struggling with the gate. He finally kicks it open and starts slowly up the path toward Mary.
Well, are you coming in or aren't you?
Well, I'll come in for a minute, but I didn't tell anybody I was coming over here.
Mary and George are in the entrance hall.
When did you get back?
Tuesday.
Get that dress.
Do you like it?
It's all right. Thought you'd go back to New York like Sam and Amy and the rest of them.
Oh, I worked there for a couple vacations, but I don't know. I guess I was homesick.
Homesick? For Bedford Falls?
Yes, and my family and... Oh, everything. Would you like to sit down?
They go through the doorway into the parlor.
All right, for a minute. So yeah, I can't understand it though. You know, I didn't tell anybody I was coming.
Would you rather leave?
No, I don't want to be rude.
Well then, sit down.
George sees the cartoon on the easel and bends down for a close look at it.
Some joke, huh?
George and Mary sitting on the divan. He is uncomfortable, and she tries desperately to keep the conversation alive.
Well, I see those fine needles in here.
Thank you.
There is a silence for a moment. Then Mary joins in singing with the phonograph record, which has been playing all through the above scene.
And dance by the lights.
What's the matter? Oh, yeah.
He looks at his watch as though about to leave.
Well,
It was nice of your brother Harry, Ruth, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's all right.
Don't you like her?
Well, of course I like her. She's a peach.
It's just the marriage in general you're not enthusiastic about, huh?
No, marriage is like Harry and Marty and Sam and you.
Mrs. Hatch, in a bathrobe, with her hair in curlers, is leaning over the banister as she calls.
Mary, Mary.
George and Mary are seated on the divan.
Who's down there with you?
It's George Bailey, Mother.
George Bailey? What's he want?
I don't know. What do you want?
Me? Well, Faye, I just came in to get a water.
He's making violent love to me, Mother.
George is aghast.
You tell him to go right back home, and don't you leave this house either. Sam Wainwright promised to call you from New York tonight.
What's your mother needs? No, I didn't come here to...
What did you come here for?
I don't know. You tell me. This is the one that has all the answers. You tell me.
Oh, why don't you just go home?
Well, that's where I'm going. I don't know why I came in here in the first place. Good night.
As George leaves the room, the telephone in the hall starts ringing.
Good night.
Mary, Mary, the telephone, it's Sam.
Interior hall night. Mary comes into the hall.
I'll get it.
As Mary comes into the hall, she stops the phonograph, which is still playing Buffalo Gals, takes off the record with a jerk and smashes it against the machine. The phone is still ringing.
Mary, he's waiting.
Hello?
As Mary picks up the phone, George comes in from the front porch.
Got my hat.
Hey-ha! Hello, Sam. How are you?
Oh, great. Gee, it's good to hear your voice again.
George has stopped, hat in hand, to hear the first greetings.
Oh, well, that's awfully sweet of you, Sam. There's an old friend of yours here, George Bailey.
You mean old Mossback?
Yes,
Mossback
old
George.
Mossback George.
Aw, hee-haw, put him on.
Well, wait a minute, I'll call him. George!
He doesn't want to speak to George, you idiot.
He does so. He asked for him. George, Sam wants to speak with you.
He hands the instrument to George.
Oh, Sam.
Interior Sam's New York office night. Sam is seated at his desk while a couple of his friends are nearby with highballs in their hands.
Well, George Baileyovsky, hey, a fine pal you are. What are you trying to do? Steal my girl?
Interior Hatch Hall night.
What do you mean? I'm not trying to steal your girl. Here's Mary.
No, wait a minute. I want to talk to both of you. Tell Mary to get on the extension.
Here, you take it. You tell him.
Mother's on the extension.
Interior upper hallway night, Mrs. Hatch. She hears this. She hastily hangs up the extension phone on which she has been listening. Back to George and Mary.
We can both hear. Come here.
Mary takes the telephone from George and holds it so that of necessity George's cheek is almost against hers. He is very conscious of her proximity.
We're listening, Sam.
I have a big deal coming that's going to make us all rich. George, you remember that night in Martini's bar when you told me you read some place about making plastics out of soybeans?
Huh? Yeah. Soybeans, yeah.
Well, Dad snapped up the ideas. He's going to build a factory outside of Rochester. How do you like it?
Mary is watching George interestedly. George is very conscious of her, close to him.
Rochester. Rochester.
Well, why not? Can you think of anything better?
Oh, I don't know. Why not here? You remember how one machinery works. Look how far you can get that for a song and all the labor he wants to. Half the town was thrown out of work when he closed down.
That's so. Well, I'll tell him. Hey, that sounds great. Oh, baby, I know you'd come through. Now, here's the point. Mary, you're in this. You're on this too. Now, listen. Have you got any money?
Money? Yeah, a little.
Well, now listen. I want you to put every cent you've got into our stock. You hear? And George, I may have a job for you that is, unless you're still married to that broken down building and loan. This is the biggest thing since radio, and I'm letting you in on the ground floor. Oh, Mary.
I'm here.
Would you tell that guy I'm giving him the chance of a lifetime? You hear? The chance of a lifetime.
As Mary listens, she turns to look at George, her lips almost on his lips.
He says it's the chance of a lifetime.
George can stand it no longer. He drops the phone with a crash, grabs Mary by the shoulders and shakes her. Mary begins to cry.
Now you listen to me. I don't want any plastics. I don't want any ground floors. I don't want to get married. I never to anyone. You understand that? I want to do what I want to do. And you're.
He pulls her to him in a fierce embrace. Two meant for each other find themselves in tearful ecstasy.
Mary.
George.
Mary.
Mrs. Hatch is at the top of the stairs. She practically faints at what she sees. Wipe to interior hall Bailey home day, several months later. Cousin Tilly's face fills the screen as she cries.
Here they come!
Camera pulls back and we hear the sound of the wedding march. People are crowded into the rooms. Family, friends, neighbors. There's a din of conversation. Mary and George appear at the top of the stairs in traveling clothes with Mrs. Hatch, red-eyed, behind them. Mary throws her bouquet, which is caught by Violet Bick. As they come out onto the porch, we see that it is raining. Nevertheless, Cousin Eustace and his camera equipment setup is taking pictures of the group. George and Mary dodge through the rain and a shower of rice and get into Ernie's taxi cab, which pulls away from the curb. Exterior porch of the Bailey house. Mrs. Bailey and Annie the maid.
First Harry, now George, Annie, we're just two old maids now.
You speak for yourself, Mrs. B.
Interior Ernie's cab. George, Mary, and Ernie. George and Mary are in each other's arms.
If either of you two see a stranger around here, it's me.
Hey, look, somebody's driving this cab.
Ernie reaches over and hands George a bottle of champagne done up in gift wrappings.
Bert the cop sent this over. He said to float away to Happy Land on the bubbles.
Oh, look at this champagne.
Mary.
Good old Bert.
Oh, by the way, where are you two going on? Where are you two going on this year now honeymoon?
Where are we going? Look at this. Here's a kitty, Ernie. Here, come on, count it, Mary.
I feel like it's a bootleg. I feel like a bootlegger's wife. Look.
You know what we're going to do? We're going to shoot the whole week in New York, whole week in Bermuda, the highest hotels, the oldest champagne, the richest caviar, the hottest music, and the prettiest.
That does it. Then what?
I don't want to.
After that, who cares?
Bert doesn't come here.
The cab passes the bank, and Ernie sees a crowd of people around the door. He stops the cab. Scurrying people under umbrellas swarming around the bank's doors. Panic is in the air. Attendants are trying to close down. Several people come running past the cab. Close shot interior cab, George, Mary, and Ernie.
Now, there's something funny going on there at the bank, George. I've never really seen one, but that's got all the earmarks of a run.
Hey, Ernie, if you got any money in the bank, you better hurry.
George, let's not stop. Let's go.
George gets out of the cab and looks down the street.
Spin it there. Oh.
Oh, please, let's not stop, George.
I'll be back in a minute, Mary.
George runs off of the street toward the building and loan. Exterior building and loan day. An iron grill blocks the street entrance to the building and loan. It has been locked. A crowd of men and women are waiting around the grill. They are simply dressed people to whom their savings are a matter of life and death. George comes in with an assumed cheerful manner. The people look at him silently, half shamefaced, but grimly determined on their rights. In their hearts, there is panic and fear.
Hello, everybody. It's Thompson. How are you? Charlie? What's the matter here? Can't you get in?
No one answers. He quickly unlocks the grill door and pushes it open. Followed by the crowd, George runs upstairs and into the outer offices of the building and loan. Interior outer office, building and loan day. George, followed by the still silent people, comes in. Uncle Billy is standing in the doorway to his private office, taking a drink from a bottle. He motions to George to join them.
What is this, Uncle Billy? All day?
George. He points to George's office. George turns back cheerfully to the crowd.
Come on in, everybody. That's right. Just come on in.
George vaults over the counter.
Now, look, why don't you all sit down? There are a lot of seats over there. Just make yourselves at home.
Just, George, can I see you a minute? The people ignore George and remain standing in front of the teller's window. They all have their passbooks out. George hurries into his office where Uncle Billy is waiting for him. Interior George's office day. George and Uncle Billy.
Why'd you call me?
I just did, but they said you left. This is a pickle, George. This is a pickle.
All right, now, what happened? How did it start?
How does anything like this ever start? All I know is the bank called our loan.
When?
About an hour ago. I had to hand over all of our cash.
All of it?
Every cent of it. And it still was less than we owe.
Holy mackerel.
And then I got scared, George. I closed the doors.
Crazy.
The telephone rings. Uncle Billy picks it up. Yes, hello? George, it's Potter.
Oh,
Interior Potter's library, day. Potter seated behind his desk, his goon alongside him. Standing in front of the desk is the disgruntled-looking man, obviously the president of the bank. He is mopping his brow with his handkerchief.
George, there's a rumor around town that you've closed your doors. Is that true? Oh, well, I'm very glad to hear that. George, are you all right? Do you need any police?
Close shot, George and Uncle Billy.
Police, what for?
Potter's office.
Well, moms get pretty ugly sometimes, you know. George, I'm going all out to help in this crisis. I have just guaranteed the bank sufficient funds to meet their needs. They'll close up for a week and then reopen.
George's office.
You just took over the bank.
Potter's office.
I may lose a fortune, but I'm willing to guarantee your people too. Just tell them to bring their shares over here and I will pay them 50 cents on the dollar.
George's office.
Oh, you never miss a trick, do you, Potter? You're going to miss this one.
George bangs the receiver down and turns to meet Uncle Billy's anxious look. Close up on Potter's phone.
Doors before 6 p.m. You will never reopen.
He realizes George has hung up and clicks the phone furiously. Interior George's office. George and Uncle Billy. George, was it a nice wedding? Gosh, I wanted to be there.
Yeah. You can take this one off
An ominous sound of angry voices comes from the outer room. George and Uncle Billy exit from George's office. Interior outer office, building and loan day. More people have crowded around the counter. Their muttering stops when they stand silent and grim. There is panic on their faces.
Now just remember that this thing isn't as black as it appears.
As George speaks, sirens are heard passing the street below. The crowd turn to the windows, then back to George.
I have some news for you folks. I just talked to old man Potter, and he's guaranteed cash payments at the bank. The bank's going to reopen next week.
But George, I got my money here.
Did he guarantee this place?
Well, no, Charlie, I didn't even ask him. We don't need Potter over here.
Mary and Ernie have come into the room during this scene. Mary stands watching silently.
I'll take mine now.
No, but you're thinking of this place all wrong. As if I had the money back in the safe. The money's not here. The money's in Joe's house, right next to yours, and in the Kenny house, and Mrs. Macklin's house, and 100 others. Why are you lending them the money to Bill, and then they're going to pay it back to you as best they can? Now, what are you going to do? Foreclose on them?
I got $242 in here, and $242 isn't going to break anybody.
Okay, Tom, all right. Here you are. You signed this. You'll get your money in 60 days.
60 days?
Well, now that's what you agreed to when you bought your shares.
There is a commotion at the outer doors. A man, Randall, comes in and makes his way up to Tom.
Tom, did you get your money?
No.
Well, I did. Old man Potter will pay 50 cents on the dollar for every share you got.
50 cents on the dollar?
Yes, cash.
Well, what do you say?
Now, Tom, you have to stick to your original agreement. Now, give us 60 days on this.
Okay, Randall.
He starts out.
Are you going to Potter's?
Better to get half than nothing.
A few other people start for the door. Camera pans with George as he vaults over the counter quickly, speaking to the people.
Tom, Randall, now wait, now listen to me. I beg you not to do this thing. If Potter gets hold of this building alone, there'll never be another decent house built in this town. He's already got charge of the bank. He's got the bus line. He's got the department stores. Now he's after us. Why? Well, it's very simple, because we're cutting in on his business. That's why. Because he wants to keep you living in the slums and paying the kind of rent he decides.
The people are still trying to get out, but some of them have stood still listening to him. George has begun to make an impression on them.
Joe, you lived in one of his houses, didn't you? Well, have you forgotten? Have you forgotten what he charged you for that broken down shack? Here, Ed, you remember last year when things weren't going so well and you couldn't make your payments? You didn't lose your house, did you? You think Potter would have let you keep it? Can't you understand what's happening here? Don't you see what's happening? Potter isn't selling. Potter's buying. And why? Because we're panicking and he's not. That's why. We got some bargains. Now we can get through this thing all right. We gotta stick together, no? We gotta have faith in each other.
But my husband hasn't worked in over a year and I need money.
How am I going to live until the bank opens?
I got doctor bills to pay.
I need cash.
Can't feed my kids on faith.
During this scene, Mary has come up behind the counter. Suddenly, as the people once more start moving toward the door, she holds up a roll of bills and calls out.
How much money do you need?
George jumps over the counter and takes the money from Mary.
Hey, I got $2,000. Here's $2,000. This will tide us over until the bank reopen. All right, Tom. How much do you need?
$242.
Oh, Tom, that's enough for tide you over until the bank reopens.
I'll take $242.
George starts rapidly to count out the money. Tom throws his passbook on the counter.
Here you are.
That'll close my account.
Your account's still here. That's a loan.
Mary turns and slips out through the crowd, followed by Ernie. George hands the $242 to Tom and speaks to Ed, the next in line.
Okay, all right, Ed.
I got $300 here, George. Uncle Billy takes out his wallet and takes out all the cash he's got.
Oh, now. What will it take till the bank reopens? What do you need?
Well, I suppose $20?
$20. Now you're talking. Fine, thanks. All right, now, Mrs. Thompson, how much do you want?
But it's your own money, George.
Never mind about that. How much do you want?
I can get along with 20, all right.
$20.
And I'll sign a paper.
You don't have to sign anything. I know you'll pay it when you can. That's okay. All right, Mrs. Davis.
Could I have $17.50?
Seven. Bless your heart. Of course you can have it. You got 50 cents. Seven.
Wipe 2, interior outer office building and loan. Night. George, Uncle Billy, and Cousin Tilly are behind the counter watching the minute hand of a clock on the wall as George counts off the seconds. Cousin Eustace is ready to close the door. We're going to make it, George. They'll never close us up today.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bingo!
Cousin Eustace slams and locks the door and scurries around the counter to join the others.
We made it. Look, we're still in business. We got $2 left.
Uncle Billy is taking a drink out of a bottle.
Well, let's have some of that. Get some glasses, Cousin Tilly. We are a couple of mechanical wizards.
Those Rockefellers.
Yeah, trade for these great big important Samoans.
We'll save them for seed. A toast. They raise their glasses.
Toast of Papa Dollar and to Mama Dollar. And you want a whole billion alone to stay in business? You better have a family real quick.
I wish they were rabbits.
I wish they were too. Okay, let's put them to safe and see what happens.
The four of them parade through the office. George puts the $2 in the safe. Close-up shot of the group around the safe door as George comes out.
Wedding cigars.
Oh, wedding. Holy mackerel, I'm married. Where's Mary? Mary? Poor Mary. Look, I've got a train to catch. Well, the train's gone. Wonder if Bertie's still here with his taxi cab.
George rushes into his office to look out the window.
George, there's a call for you.
Look, we get my wife on the phone. She's called over one of her mothers.
Mrs. Bailey is on the phone.
Interior George's office. Close up, George is thoroughly rattled.
I don't want Mrs. Bailey. I want my wife. Mrs. Bailey. Where's my wife? Here, I'll take it. I'll take it in here. Harry? Hello? Wasn't there? I'm sorry. What? Come home? What home? 320 Sycamore. Well, what? Whose home is that? The Waldorf Hotel, huh?
Wipe to exterior old Granville house. Night. An old-fashioned rundown house, unpainted and warped by the weather. It once had class, but has not been lived in for years. This is the house that George and Mary will live in from now on. The rain is pouring down. A faint glow of light shines out from the bottom windows. George hurries into scene. He stops to make sure it is the right number before going up the steps. Interior side of house. Bert and man working in rain, sorting through travel posters.
Hey, this is the company's posters, and the company won't like this. How would you like to get a ticket next week? Haven't you had any romance in you? Sure I have, but I got rid of it. Liver pills. Who wants to see liver pills on this honeymoon? What? They want romantic places, beautiful places, places George wants to go.
A sharp whistle is heard. Close shot, window of house. Ernie is leaning from the window.
Bert, here he comes.
Bert and man.
Come on, we got to see this up. He's coming. Who? The groom, idiot. Come on, get that ladder. What are they, ducks?
Close shot, side porch of house. Bert and the man are putting up travel posters to cover up the broken windows.
Get the ladder up there. All right. Hurry up. I'm hurrying.
George is approaching the front door of the house, on which a sign is hanging, Bridal Suite. Ernie looks out through the curtain covering the broken glass of the front door.
Hiya. Good evening, sir.
Ernie opens the door, revealing himself as a homemade butler. This has been accomplished by rolling up his pants and putting on an old coachman's hat. George enters.
Entrez, monsieur. Entrez.
Interior Granville house. George enters. The house is carpetless, empty. The rain and wind cause funny noises upstairs. A huge fire is burning in the fireplace. Near the fireplace, a collection of packing boxes are heaped together in the shape of a small table and covered with a checkered oilcloth. It is set for two. A bucket with ice and a champagne bottle sit on the table, as well as a bowl of caviar. Two small chickens are impaled on a spit over the fire. The phonograph is playing on a box and a string from the phonograph is turning the chickens on the spit. The phonograph is playing Song of the Islands. Mary is standing near the fireplace looking as pretty as any bride ever looked. She's smiling at George, who has been slowly taking in the whole setup. Through a door, he sees the end of a cheap bed, over the back of which a pair of pajamas and a nightie. Ernie exits and closes the door.
Welcome home, Mr. Bailey.
I'll be. Mary, where did you?
They rush into each other's arms and hold each other in ecstasy. Exterior side of house night, close shot. Bert and Ernie, standing in the pouring rain, start singing I Love You Truly. George and Mary remain embraced.
Oh, Mary.
Remember the night when we broke the windows in this old house? This is what I wished for.
Darling, you're wonderful.
They finish their song and Ernie kisses Bert on the forehead. Bert slams Ernie's hat on his head. Exterior slum street, Bedford Falls, day, 2 years later. In front of one of the miserable shacks that line the street are two vehicles. One of them is George Bailey's rickety car, and the other is an even more rickety truck piled high with household goods. The Martini family is moving. The family consists of Martini, his wife, and 4 kids of various ages from 2 to 10. George and Mary are helping the Martinis move. About a dozen neighbors crowd around. Martini and George, assisted by 3 of the Martini children, are carrying out the last of the furniture. As they emerge from the house, one of the neighbors, Schultz, calls out, Martini, you rented a new house?
Rent? You hear what he say, Mr. Bailey?
What's that?
I own the house. Me, Giuseppe Martini. I own my own house. No more we live like pigs in this potter's field. Hurry, Maria.
Yes.
Come on, bring the baby. I'll bring the kids in the car.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Bailey.
Mary gets in the front seat of the car with the baby in her arms.
All right, kids, here, get in here. Now get right up on the seat there. Get to go.
The family goat gets in the back seat with the 3 kids.
Goodbye, everybody.
All in.
The rickety caravan starts off down the street to the cheers of the neighbors. Wipe to exterior Bailey Park day. Sign hanging from a tree, welcome to Bailey Park. Camera pans to George's car and the old truck laden with furniture as they pass. We hear Martini's voice singing, O Sole Mio. Bailey Park is a district of new small houses, not all alike, but each individual. New lawns here and there and young trees. It has the promise when built up of being a pleasant little middle-class section. Exterior Martini's new house day. George and Mary are on the porch of the new house with the Martinis lined up before them.
Mr. and Mrs. Martini, welcome home.
The Martinis cross themselves. Exterior street, Bailey Park day. Sam Wainwright is standing in front of his big black town car. Sam is the epitome of successful up-and-coming businessman. His wife in the car is a very attractive, sophisticated-looking lady, dripping with furs and jewels. Sam is watching George cross the street.
That old George. He's always making a speech. Yeehaw.
Exterior house day. Close-up of Mary and George on porch.
Sam Wainwright.
Oh, who cares? Red, this house we never know hunger.
Mrs. Martini crosses herself.
And salt, that thy life always have flavor.
And why? That joy and prosperity may reign forever. Enter the Martini.
The Martinis cross themselves, shaking hands all around. The kids enter with screams of delight. Mrs. Martini kisses Mary. The interior Potter's office with day. Potter, seated in his wheelchair at his desk with his goon beside him. His rent collector, Reineman, is talking, pointing to maps spread out on the desk.
Look, Mr. Potter, there's no skin off my nose. I'm just your little rent collector, but you can't laugh off this Bailey Park anymore. Look at it.
The buzzer is heard, and Potter snaps on the dictaphone on his desk.
Congressman Blantz is here to see you.
Tell the congressman to wait. Go on.
50 years ago, a half dozen houses stuck here and there. There's the old cemetery, squirrels, buttercup daisies. Used to hunt rabbits there myself. Look at it today. dozens of the prettiest little homes you ever saw. 90% owned by suckers who used to pay rent to you. Your Pottersfield, my dear Mr. Employer, is doing just that. And are the local yokels making with those David and Goliath wisecracks?
Oh, they are they? Even though they have the Baileys, haven't made a dime out of it.
You know very well why. The Baileys were all chumps. One of these homes is worth twice what it cost of building a loan to build. If I were you, Miss Potter.
Oh, you're not me.
As I say, so let's get off my nose. One of these days, this bright young man's going to be asking George Bailey for a job.
Reineman exits.
Bailey family has been a boil on my neck long enough.
He flips the switch on the dictaphone.
Yes, sir.
Come in here.
Exterior street, Bailey Park. Close shot. George and Mary are talking to Sam Wainwright in front of the latter's car. His wife, Jane, is now out of the car.
We just stopped in town to take a look at the new factory, and then we're going to drive on down to Florida. To Florida.
Why don't you have your friends join us?
Why, sure. Hey, why don't you kids drive down with us, huh?
Oh, I'm afraid I couldn't get away, Sam.
Still got the nose, the old grindstone, eh, Jane? I offered to let George in on the ground floor in plastics, and he turned me down cold.
Oh, now don't rub it in.
I'm not rubbing it in. Well, I guess we better run along.
There's handshaking all around as Sam and Jane get into their car.
Awfully glad to have met you, Mary.
Nice meeting you.
Bye.
Goodbye, George.
So long, George. See you in the funny papers.
Bye, Sam.
Have fun.
Thanks for dropping around.
To Florida. Yeehaw!
Yeehaw.
The big black limousine glides away, leaving George standing with his arm around Mary, gazing broodingly after it. They slowly walk over to George's old car and look at it silently. Wipe 2, interior Potter's office. Potter is lighting a big cigar, which she has just given to George. The goon is beside Potter's chair, as usual.
Thank you, sir. Fine cigar, Mr. Potter.
I'll send you a box.
Well, I suppose I'll find out sooner or later, but just what exactly do you want to sing about?
George, now, that's just what I like so much about you. George, I'm an old man, and most people hate me, but I don't like them either. So, that makes it all even. You know just as well as I do that I run practically everything in this town, but the Bailey building and loan. You know also that for a number of years I've been trying to get control of it, or kill it, but I haven't been able to do it. You have been stopping me. In fact, you have beaten me, George. And as anyone in this country can tell you, that takes some doing. Take during the Depression, for instance. You and I were the only ones that kept our heads. You saved the building alone, and I saved all the rest.
Yes, well, most people say you stole all the rest.
The envious ones say that, George, the suckers. Now, I have stated my side very frankly. Now, let's look at your side. Young man, 27, 28, married, making, say, 40 a week?
45.
No, 45. Out of which, after supporting your mother, paying your bills, you'll be able to keep, say, 10 if you skimp. A child or two comes along and you won't even be able to save the 10. Now, if this young man of 28 was a common, ordinary yokel, I'd say he was doing fine. But George Bailey is not a common, ordinary yokel. He's an intelligent, smart, ambitious young man who hates his job, who hates the building and loan almost as much as I do. A young man who's been dying to get out on his own ever since he was born. A young man, the smartest one in the world, mind you. A young man who has to sit by and watch his friends go places because he's trapped. Yes, sir. Trapped into frittering his life away. Playing nursemaid to a lot of garlic eaters. Do I paint a correct picture or do I exaggerate?
Now, what's your point, Mr. Potter?
My point is, I want to hire you.
Hire me?
I want you to manage my affairs, run my properties. George, I'll start you out at $20,000. a year.
George drops his cigar on his lap. He nervously brushes off the sparks from his clothes.
$20,000 a year.
You wouldn't mind living in the nicest house in town, buying your wife a lot of fine clothes, a couple of business trips to New York a year, maybe once in a while Europe. You wouldn't mind that, would you, George?
Would I? You're not talking to somebody else around here, are you? You know, this is me. You remember me, George Bailey.
Oh yes, George Bailey, whose ship has just come in, providing he has brains enough to climb aboard.
Well, what about the building loan?
Oh, confound it, man. Are you afraid of success? I'm offering you a 3-year contract at $20,000 a year, starting today. Is it a deal?
Mr. Potter, I know how to jump at the chance, but I just wonder if it'd be possible for you to give me 24 hours to think it over.
Oh, sure. You go home and talk about it to your wife.
I like to do that.
In the meantime, I'll draw up the papers.
All right, sir.
Okay, George.
Okay, Mr. Potter.
As they shake hands, George feels a physical revulsion. Potter's hand feels like a cold mackerel to him. In the moment of physical contact, he knows he could never be associated with this man. George drops his hand with a shudder. He peers intently into Potter's face.
No. Wait a minute here. I wasn't talking to anybody. I know right now. And the answer is no, doggone it. You sit around here and you spin your little webs and you think the whole world revolves around you and your money. Well, listen, Mr. Potter, in the whole vast country of things, I'd say you're nothing but a scurvy little spider.
He turns and shouts at the goon, impassive as ever beside Potter's wheelchair.
That goes for you, too.
As George opens the office door to exit, he shouts at Mr. Potter's secretary in the outer office.
And it goes for you, too.
Wipe to interior bedroom, George and Mary's house, night. George enters the bedroom. The room is modestly furnished with just a cheap bed, a chair or two, and a dresser. Mary is asleep on the bed. As George comes in, his head is filled with many confusing thoughts relating to incidents in his past life.
You wouldn't mind living in the nicest house in town, buying your wife a lot of fine clothes, going to New York on a business trip a couple times a year, maybe to Europe once in a while.
George takes off his hat and coat, moves over to the dresser, and stares at his reflection in the mirror.
I know what I'm going to do tomorrow, and the next day, and next year, and the year after that. I'm taking the dust off this criminal town with my feet, and I'm going to see the world. I want to build things. I'm going to build airfields. I'm going to build skyscrapers 100 stories high. I'm going to build a bridge a mile long.
While the above thoughts are passing through George's head, his attention is caught by a picture on the wall near the dresser. Insert picture on the wall. It is the sketch of George lassoing the moon that we first saw in Mary's living room. The lettering reads, George lassos the moon.
What does you want, Mary? Want the moon? If you just say the word, I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down for you.
Mary is now awake and starts singing their theme song.
All the little gals, won't you come out tonight? Won't you come out tonight? Won't you come out tonight?
George crosses over and sits on the edge of the bed.
Hi.
Hi.
Mary Hatch. Why in the world is your hair?
To keep from being an old maid.
Could have been married to Sam anybody. Anyone else in town.
I didn't want to marry anyone else in town. I wanted my baby to look like you.
You didn't even have a honeymoon, I promise you. Or what?
My baby.
Jimmy. Mary, are you on the net?
George Bailey Lasso's Stork.
Lasso's the stork? You mean, what is it, a boy or a girl?
Mary nods her head happily. Fade to montage sequence. Over the following series of shots, we hear the voices of Joseph and Clarence in heaven. Exterior Main Street, Bedford Falls, night. George is crossing the street, heading for the offices of the building and loan.
Now you probably already guessed that George never leaves Bedford Falls.
Nope.
Interior hospital bay. Nurse holding newborn baby.
Mary had her baby, a boy.
Interior sitting room. Mary sitting on the floor playing with the baby. A little boy is in a playpen nearby.
Then she had another one, a girl.
Interior Granville house. Day. Mary is busy hanging wallpaper and painting the old place.
Day after day, she worked away remaking the old Granville house into a home.
Interior Granville House. George has just come into the hall. He is obviously tired and discouraged, and he starts up the stairs. The knob on the banister comes off in his hand.
Night after night, George came back late from the office. Potter was bearing down hard.
Wipe to exterior recruiting ground. A group of men, obviously just drafted, marching along in the camp.
Then came a war.
Interior Red Cross workroom day. Mrs. Bailey and other women in Red Cross uniforms, busily sewing, etc.
Do we want to pause for a second? Ma Bailey and Mrs. Hatch joined the Red Cross and sewed.
Exterior train and railroad station day. Mary, with portable USO pushcart, is serving coffee and donuts to men leaving from the train.
Mary had 2 more babies, but still found time to run the USO.
Interior factory day. Sam Wainwright showing set of blueprints of 2 Army officers.
Sam Wainwright made fortune in plastic hoods for planes.
Interior factory day. Potter is wheeled in toward a long table around which several men are seated.
Potter became head of the draft board.
1A, 1A, 1A.
Exterior street in Bedford Falls day. Gower and Uncle Billy are conducting a bond rally from the top of an army tank.
Gower and Uncle Billy sold war bonds.
Exterior battlefield night. Bert in uniform, moving cautiously with fixed bayonet. Smoke and flashes of gunfire in background.
Bert the cop was wounded in North Africa. Got the Silver Star.
Exterior sky day. Hundreds of planes flying overhead with parachutes dropping from them.
Ernie, the taxi driver, parachuted into France.
Exterior Remagen Bridge over the Rhine day. Marty in the foreground beckoning the soldiers to come on.
Marty helped capture the Reineman Bridge.
Interior ready room on aircraft carrier night. Harry is fastening the helmet of his flying clothes. He waves as he exits through the door.
Harry Bailey topped them all. A Navy flyer, he shot down 15 planes.
Exterior ocean from deck of carrier night. A flaming plane crashes into the sea.
2 of them as they were about to crash into a transport full of soldiers.
Yes, but George.
Interior ration office day. George, behind the counter, is trying to quiet a crowd of people all clamoring for more rations.
I think this is Joseph. This is typo.
Joseph?
George 4. On account on his ear, George fought the Battle of Bedford Falls.
George shouts.
Hold on now. What's the war going on?
Exterior street night. George, in the uniform of an air raid warden, is patrolling his beat.
Air raid warden.
Exterior house night. Man beside lighted window pulls down the shade as George blows his whistle. Exterior shot street. George is helping load his old car with scrap paper.
Paper drivers.
Exterior dump. Wheelbarrow full of junk being dumped in the pile.
Scrap drivers.
Exterior street day. Children wheeling old tires.
Rubber drives.
Interior church day. People praying in church.
Like everybody else on VE Day, he wept and prayed.
Exterior church another angle. People entering church.
On VJ Day, he wept and prayed again.
Franklin.
Joseph, now show him what happened today.
Yes, sir.
Exterior Bedford Falls Street, winter, day. George is walking along the sidewalk reading a newspaper. It is a raw, gusty day, and his overcoat and muffler flap in the breeze. Draped around one arm is a large Christmas wreath. Under his other arm are several more copies of the paper.
This morning, day before Christmas, about 10 a.m. Bedford Falls time.
George comes into where Ernie, the taxi driver, is standing on the sidewalk.
Hi, Ernie. What's that?
Insert newspaper. The front page of the paper, the Bedford Falls Sentinel. The headline reads, President decorates Harry Bailey. Local boy wins Congressional Medal of Honor. The subhead tells of a plan for a giant jubilee and parade to be followed by a banquet in honor of Commander Eric Bailey, USN, on his way home from Washington after receiving the Congressional Medal of Honor. There's a large picture of President Truman pinning the coveted medal on Harry's bosom in the midst of dignitaries. A picture of the transport which Harry saved. Practically the whole page is devoted to the story. Close shot, Ernie and George.
It's gonna snow again.
What do you mean it's gonna snow again? Look at the headlines.
I know. I think it's marvelous.
Gower comes running across the street from his drugstore and joins them.
Commander Harry Bailey, Mr. Gower, look at this second page. Now look, this is for you, this is for you, this is for you. See you again.
Exterior street day. Uncle Billy is walking along the street humming happily to himself. He sees some men decorating the courthouse with banners and bunting. There is a huge sign reading, "Welcome home, Harry Bailey." Be sure to spell the name right. Interior outer office building and loan day. The offices are unchanged. Still small time and still old fashioned. The same office force, albeit a few years older, Cousin Tilly and Cousin Eustace. Seated on a chair is a middle-aged man with a briefcase. The outer door opens and George enters.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
Cousin Tilly and Cousin Eustace are talking on the phone.
George, it's Harry now on long distance from Washington.
Harry, what do you know about that?
He reversed the charges. It's okay, isn't it?
What do you mean it's okay? For a hero? Harry, oh, you old seven kinds of son of a gun, congratulations. How's Mother standing? She did? What do you know? Mother had lunch with the president's wife.
Wait till Martha hears about this.
What do they have to eat?
Hey, what do they have to eat, Harry? You should see what they're cooking up in the town for you. Or are they? Name's going to fly Mother home this afternoon.
In a plane?
What? Uncle Billy? Has Uncle Billy come in yet?
No, he stopped at the bank first.
He's not here right now, Harry.
Cousin Eustace has turned away from George and caught a glimpse of the man waiting in the chair. This is Carter, the bank examiner, come for his annual audit of the books of the building and loan.
Well, look.
George.
Now tell me about it.
George, that man's here again.
What man?
Bank examiner.
Oh. Now here's just a minute, will you? I'll be right back.
He gives the phone to Eustace, who puts down his wreath and goes over to Carter. Close shot, George and Carter. They shake hands.
Good morning, sir.
Carter, bank examiner.
Mr. Carter, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
All excited around here. My brother just got a Congressional Medal of Honor. The president just decorated it.
Well, I guess they do those things. Well, I trust you had a good year.
Good year? Well, between you and me, Mr. Carter, we're broke.
Yeah, very funny.
Well, now come right in here, Mr. Carter.
Although I shouldn't wonder when you okay reverse charges on personal long distance calls.
Billy.
George, should we
What,
hang up?
George, should we hang up?
No. He wants to talk to Uncle Billy. You just hold on.
Now, if you'll cooperate, I'd like to finish with you by tonight. I want to spend Christmas with Elmira, with my family.
Oh, not at all, Mr. Carter. Just step right in here. We'll fix it.
Interior bank day. Uncle Billy is filling out a deposit slip with at one of the desks. December 24th. He takes a thick envelope from his inside pocket and thumbs through the bills it contains. It is evidently a large sum of money. 8,000. Medium shot door to street. Potter is being wheeled in by his goon. Various bank officials run over to greet him. He is reading the newspaper. Uncle Billy has finished filling out his slip and comes over to taunt Potter, the envelope containing the money in his hand. Well, good morning, Mr. Potter. What's the news? He grabs the paper from Potter's hand. Well. Harry Bailey wins Congressional Medal. That wouldn't be one of the Bailey boys. You just can't keep these Baileys down now, can you, Mr. Potter?
Slacker George feel about that?
Very jealous, very jealous. He only lost 3 buttons off his vest. Of course, Slacker George would have gotten 2 of those medals if he had gone.
Bad ear.
Yes. Uncle Billy folds Potter's paper over the envelopes containing his money and flings his final taunt at the old man. After all, Potter, some people like George had to stay home. Not every heel was in Germany and Japan. In a cold rage, Potter grabs his paper and wheels off toward his office. Uncle Billy smiles triumphantly and goes toward a deposit window with his deposit slip. Close shot, Uncle Billy and the teller at the window. Good morning, Horace. Uncle Billy hands the bank book over. The teller opens it, starts to punch it with rubber stamps.
Guess you forgot something.
Huh?
You forgot something.
What?
Well, aren't you going to make a deposit?
Sure I am.
Well, then, it's usually customary to bring the money with you.
Oh, shucks. Uncle Billy searches through every pocket he has. I know I had it. The teller, knowing the old man's vagaries, points to one of the numerous strings tied around his fingers.
How about that one there?
Well, Interior Potter's office day, close shot. Potter is now behind his desk. He spreads the newspaper out in front of him, muttering as he does so. He sees the envelope, looks inside at the money, then to his goon, indicating the office door.
Take me back there. Hurry up. Come on, look sharp.
Potter opens the door just a little and peers through into the bank. Interior bank day, close shot, deposit slip bank, desk. Uncle Billy looks around for the money envelopes. It is not there. He looks puzzled, thinks hard, then a look of concern creeps into his eyes. He starts thumping his pockets with increasing panic and looks in the wastepaper basket on the floor. He finally rushes through the door and out into the street. Interior Potter's office day, close shot, Potter watching through the door.
Take me back.
The goon wheels him back to his desk. He is deep in thought with a crafty expression on his face. Exterior street day. Uncle Billy running across the street in the direction of the building and loan. Interior outer office, building and loan. George coming from the room where he's just left the bank examiner.
You make yourself at home, Mr. Carter. I'll get those books for you.
He sees Violet Vick standing there.
Oh, hello, Vi.
George, can I see you for a second?
Why, of course you can. Come in the office here.
He hears a noise and sees Uncle Billy entering the office.
Uncle Billy, talk to Harry. He's on the phone.
George and Violet enter his private office. Uncle Billy comes hurrying in. Billy.
Uncle Billy, hurry. Long distance from Washington.
Hey, here's Harry on the phone.
Harry, your nephew, remember?
Here he is.
Uncle Billy picks up the phone and speaks distractedly without knowing what he is saying. Hello? Hello? Yes, Harry. Yes. Everything's fine. He hangs up agitatedly, muttering to himself as he goes into his own office. Cousin Tilly and Cousin Eustace look after him, dumbfounded. I should have my head examined. $8,000. It's got to be somewhere. Interior George's office today. George and Violet. George has just finished writing something and is slipping the paper into an envelope.
Here you are.
Character. If I had any character, I'd...
There's a lot of character to leave her hometown and start all over again.
He pulls some money from his pocket and offers it to her.
No, George, don't.
Here now, you're broke, aren't you?
I know, but...
What do you want to do? Hawk your furs and that hat? Want to walk to New York? You know they charge for meals right up there, just the same as they do in Bedford Falls.
Yeah, sure.
It's a loan. That's my business. Billing a loan. Besides, you'll get a job. Good luck to you.
She looks at him, then says a strange thing.
I'm glad I know you, George Bailey.
She reaches up and kisses him on the cheek, leaving lipstick. George opens the door for her. Interior outer office day. As George and Violet come through the door, they are being watched by Cousin Tilly, Cousin Eustace, and the bank examiner, who is still waiting to go to work on the books.
Say hello to New York for me.
Yeah. Sure I will.
Now let's hear from you.
Violet sees the lipstick on George's cheek and dabs at it with her handkerchief.
What's the matter? Merry Christmas, guy.
Merry Christmas, George.
She exits.
Bailey.
Oh, Mr. Carter, I'm sorry. I'll be right with you. Uncle Billy in?
Yeah, he's in his office. Interior doorway to Uncle Billy's office, close shot. As George opens the door, he sees Uncle Billy frantically looking for the missing envelope. The office is in a mess. Drawers are open and papers scattered on the floor and on the desk.
Oh, what's going on? The bank examiner's here tonight.
He's here?
Yeah, he wants the accounts payable.
George stops short, suddenly aware of the tragic old eyes looking up at him.
What's the matter with you?
Uncle Billy gestures nervously for George to come in. He does so and closes the door. Interior outer office. Cousin Tilly is at her switchboard and Cousin Eustace standing beside her. Carter is still waiting in the doorway to his office. Suddenly, the door opens and George comes striding out. He goes directly to the safe and starts searching, but doesn't find the money. Then he goes to the cash drawer in the counter and looks through it.
Eustace?
Yeah?
Come here a minute.
Cousin Eustace runs over to George.
You see Uncle Billy want any cash last night?
He had it on his desk counting it before he closed up.
Exterior Main Street, Bedford Falls day. Uncle Billy and George are retracing the former steps through the snow, looking everywhere for the missing money. They pause for a moment on the sidewalk.
Now look, did you buy anything?
Nothing. Not even a stick of gum.
All right. We'll go over every step you took since you left the house. This way.
This way. They continue down the street on their search. Exterior window of Potter's office in bank day. Potter is peering through the slats of the Venetian blind, watching them as they go. Exterior Main Street, Bedford Falls. George and Uncle Billy continue their search. Interior Uncle Billy's living room, a shabby, old-fashioned gaslit room, which has been turned almost inside out and upside down in an effort to locate missing money. Drawers of an old secretary have been pulled out and are on the floor. Every conceivable place which might have been used for Uncle Billy to put the money has been searched. George, his hair rumpled, is feverishly pursuing the search. Uncle Billy is seated behind the desk, his head on his hands.
Didn't you put an envelope in your pocket?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. I don't want any maybe, Uncle Billy. We gotta find that money.
Oh, I'm no good to you, George.
Listen, do you have any secret hiding place here in the house? Someplace you can put it? Someplace to hide that money?
I've been over the whole house, even in the rooms that have been locked ever since I lost Laura. Uncle Billy stops sobbing hysterically. George grabs him by the lapels and shakes him.
Listen to me. Think.
I can't think anymore, George. I can't think anymore. It hurts. George jerks him to his feet and shakes him. Uncle Billy stands before him like a frisked criminal, all his pockets hanging out empty. George's eyes and manner are almost maniacal.
Where's the money, you stupid, silly old fool? Where's the money? You realize what this means? It means bankruptcy and scandal and prison.
He throws Uncle Billy down into his chair and still shouts at him.
This is what it means. One of us is going to jail. Well, it's not going to be me.
George turns and heads for the door, kicking viciously at a wastebasket on the floor as he goes. Uncle Billy remains sobbing at the table, his head in his arms. Interior George's living room at night. Janie, aged 8, is seated with the piano playing Hark the Herald Angels Sing, which she practices during the remainder of the scene. There's a Christmas tree all decorated near the fireplace. At the large table, Mary is busy putting cellophane bows on decorations of gift packages. At the small table, Pete, aged 9, is seated with pad and pencil in the throes of composition. On the floor, Tommy, aged 3, is playing with a toy vacuum cleaner. We hear the sound of a door open and close. Mary turns and sees George enter the hall, a slight powdering of snow on his head and shoulders. Interior hall, night, as George comes into the house.
Hello, darling.
Hello, Daddy.
Hello, Daddy.
Hello, Daddy.
How do you like it?
George sneezes violently.
Bless you.
Did you bring the wreath?
Bring the
Did
Christmas
you bring
wreath?
the Christmas wreath?
What wreath?
The Merry Christmas wreath for the window.
Oh, I left it at the office.
Is it snowing?
Yeah, it started.
Where's your coat and hat?
Left them at the office.
Mary stares at him, aware that something unusual has happened.
What's the matter?
Everything's all right.
Interior living room. George slumps into an armchair and lifts Tommy onto his lap. Mary is helping Pete decorate the Christmas tree.
Go on, Pete. You're a big boy. You can put up the star up. Way up at the top. That's it. Fill in that little bare spot right there. That's it. Isn't it wonderful about Harry? We're famous, George. I bet I've had 50 calls today about the parade, the banquet. Your mother's so excited.
During the scene, George has been sitting in the chair, hugging Tommy to him and crying quietly. Mary realizes that something is seriously wrong and breaks off. Janie is thumping away at the piano.
You keep playing that.
I have to practice for the party tonight, Daddy.
Mommy said
Mommy
we can
says
stay up
we
till
can stay
midnight
up
and
until
sing
midnight
Christmas
and sing
carols.
Christmas carols.
Can you sing, Daddy?
Better hurry and shave. The families will be here soon.
Families? What are the families over here?
Mary leads him out toward the kitchen.
Come out in the kitchen with me while I finish dinner.
They exit with Tommy hanging onto George's coattails and pulling at him. Camera pans with them.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
Interior hall night as they go toward the kitchen.
Have a hectic day.
Oh yeah, another big red letter day for the Baileys.
Daddy, the Browns next door have a new car. You should see it.
Well, what's the matter with our car? Isn't it good enough for you?
Yes, Daddy. Excuse me. Excuse me.
Interior kitchen night. They come through the door.
Excuse you for what?
I burped.
All right, darling, you're excused. Now go upstairs and we'll see what a little Zuzu wants.
Tommy leaves and Mary turns to the stove.
Zuzu? What's the matter with Zuzu?
Oh, she's got a cold. She's in my bed. Got it coming home from school. They gave her a flower for a prize and she didn't want to crush it, so she didn't button up her coat.
What is it, a sore throat or what?
Just a cold. The doctor says it's nothing serious.
Doctor? Was a doctor here?
Yes, I called him right away. He says it's nothing to worry about.
You rang a temperature? What is it?
Just a teensy one, 99.6. She'll be all right.
George paces about the kitchen, worried.
Gosh, this whole house. Why do we all have a pneumonia? This drafty old barn might as well be living in a refrigerator. Why do I have to live in here in the first place? Stay around this measly, crummy old town.
George, what's wrong?
Wrong. Everything's wrong. You call us a happy family? Or why do we have to have all these kids?
Dad, how do you spell frankincense?
I don't know. Ask your mother.
George goes toward the doorway.
Where are you going?
Went up to see Zuzu.
We hear the footsteps as he leaves. Mary looks after him, puzzled and concerned. Then comes over to Pete.
Want me to write a play for tonight?
Frankin.
Interior hall night. George starts up the stairs. The knob on the banister comes off in his hand, and for a moment he has an impulse to hurl it into the living room. Then he replaces the knob and goes on up the stairs. Interior Zuzu's bedroom night. Full shot. The sound of Janie at the piano can be heard, the same monotonous rhythm over and over. Zuzu, aged 6, is sitting up in her bed, the lamp burning beside her. She is holding her prize flower. George tiptoes in. Then as he sees she's awake, he comes over, sitting on the edge of her bed.
Hi, Daddy.
Well, what happened to you?
I want a flower.
She starts to get out of bed.
Wait now. Where do you think you're going?
Want to give my flower a drink?
All right. Here, give Daddy the flower. I'll give her a drink.
She takes her head and presses the flower to her. A few petals fall off. She picks them up.
Look, Daddy, paste it.
Yeah, all right. Now all places together.
She hands him the fallen petals and the flower. He turns his back to Zuzu, pretending to be tinkering with the flower. He sticks the fallen petals in his watch pocket, rearranging the flower, and turns back to Zuzu.
There it is. Good as new.
Give the flower a drink.
George puts the flower in a glass of water on the table beside her bed.
This would be for me.
They whisper.
What?
You trying to get some sleep?
I'm not sleepy. I want to look at my flower.
I know, but you just go to sleep. You need to dream about it. You don't guard it.
It will?
Uh-huh.
She closes her eyes and relaxes on the bed. George pulls the covers over her. He bends down and his lips touch the tendril of the child's hair. He then gets up and tiptoes out of the room. Interior living room, night. Janie is still pounding with grim determination at the piano. Pete is seated at the table writing. Tommy is playing with his toy vacuum cleaner. The telephone rings.
Telephone.
Interior living room night. Mary comes in and picks up the phone.
I'll get it. Hello? Yes, this is Mrs. Bailey.
George enters shot and stands listening to her.
Oh, thank you, Mrs. Welch. I'm sure he'll be all right. The doctor says that she ought to be out of bed in time to have her Christmas dinner.
That's Zuzu's teacher?
Yes.
Let me speak to her.
He snatches the phone from Mary.
Hello, Mrs. Welch? This is George Bailey. I'm Zuzu's father. Say, what kind of teacher are you anyway? What do you mean sending her home like that, half naked? You realize she'll probably end up with a pneumonia on account of you?
George!
She puts a restraining hand on his arm. He shakes it off. She cannot know that George's tirade against Mrs. Welch is really a tirade against the world, against life itself, against God. Over the phone, we hear Mrs. Welch's voice sputtering with protest.
This sort of thing we pay taxes for, to have teachers like you, silly, stupid, careless people who send our kids home without any clothes on. You know, maybe my kids aren't the best dressed kids, but maybe they don't have any decent clothes.
Mary succeeds in wresting the phone from George's hand.
Ah, it's stupid.
Mary speaks quickly into the phone.
Hello, Mrs. Welch. I want to apologize. Hello? Hello? She's hung up.
I'll hang her up.
But the telephone is suddenly alive with a powerful male voice calling.
Now, who do you think you are?
George hears this and grabs the receiver from Mary.
Wait a minute. Hello, who's this? Oh, Mr. Welch. Okay, that's fine, Mr. Welch. Give me a chance to tell you what I really think of your wife.
Mary once more tries to take the phone from him.
George.
Will you get out and let me handle this? Hello? What? Oh, you will, huh? Okay, Mr. Welch. Only time you're thinking man enough. Hello?
But before he can think of an insult to top Mr. Welch's, we hear a click on the phone. He hangs up the receiver and turns toward the living room. His face is flushed and wet.
Daddy, how do you spell hallelujah?
How should I know? What do you think I am, a dictionary?
He yells at Tommy, noisily playing with his vacuum cleaner.
Tommy, stop that. Stop it.
Janie is still practicing at the piano monotonously.
Janie, haven't you learned that silly tune yet? You'll play it over and over again. Now stop it. Stop it.
Interior living room, night. The room has suddenly become ominously quiet, the only sound being George's labored breathing. George goes over to a corner of the room where his workshop is set up. A drawing table, several models of modern buildings, bridges, etc. He savagely kicks over the models, picks up some books and hurls them onto the corner. Mary and the children watch, horrified. George looks around and sees them staring at him as if he were some unknown wild animal. The three children are crying.
I'm sorry. Mary, Janie, I'm sorry. I didn't. You go on practice. I owe you an apology too. I'm sorry. Well, what do you want to know?
Nothing, Daddy.
Mary and his children stare at him, stunned by his furious outburst. There's a silence in the room.
What's the matter, everybody? Then you go on. Go to practice. And go on and play.
Janie breaks into sobs.
Oh, Daddy.
George, why must you torture the children? Why don't you?
The sight of Mary and the children's suffering is too much for George.
Mary.
He looks around him, then quickly goes out the front door of the house. Mary goes to the phone, picks it up.
Bedford, 247, please.
Daddy in trouble?
Shall I pray for him?
Yes, Janie. Pray very hard.
Me too.
You too, Tommy. Hello, Uncle Billy?
Interior Potter's office in Bank, night, 8:00 p.m. Potter is seated at his desk, his goon beside him. He is signing some papers. George is seated in a chair before the desk, without a hat or coat, covered lightly with snow.
I'm in trouble, Mr. Potter. I need help. Some sort of accident, my company shortened their accounts. Bank examiner's up there today. I gotta raise $8,000 immediately.
Oh, so that's what the reporters wanted to talk to you.
The reporters?
Yes. They called me up from your building and loan. Oh, there's a man over there from the DA offices, too. He's looking for you.
Please help me, Mr. Potter. Help me, won't you, please? You see what it means to my family? I'll pay you any sort of a house bonus on the loan. Any interest. You still want the billion loan, why?
Oh, George, could it possibly be there's a slight discrepancy in the books?
No, sir. There's nothing wrong with the books. I just misplaced $8,000. I can't find it anywhere.
You misplaced $8,000.
Yes, sir.
Have you notified the police?
No, sir. I didn't want publicity. Harry's homecoming tomorrow.
Oh, they're going to believe that one. What have you been doing, George? Playing the market with the company's money?
No, sir. No, sir. I haven't.
What is it? A woman then? You know, it's all over town that you've been giving money to Violet Vick.
What?
No, not that it makes any difference to me. But why did you come to me? Why don't you go to Sam Wainwright and ask him for the money?
I can't get a hold of him. He's in Europe.
Oh, what about all your other friends?
They don't have that kind of money, Mr. Potter. You know that. You're the only one in town that can help me.
I see. I've suddenly become quite important. What kind of security would I have, George? Got any stocks?
No, sir.
Bonds, real estate, collateral of any kind?
I have some life insurance, $15,000 policy.
Yes. How much is your equity?
$500.
Ha! Look at you. You used to be so cocky. You're going to go out and conquer the world. You once called me a warped, frustrated old man. What are you, but a warped, frustrated young man? A miserable little clerk crawling in here on your hands and knees and begging for help? No securities, no stocks, no bonds, nothing but a miserable little $500 equity in a life insurance policy? You're worth more dead than alive. Why don't you go to the riffraff you love so much and ask them to let you have $8,000? You know why? Because they'd run you out of town on a rail. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do for you, George. Since the state examiner is still here as a stockholder of the building loan, I'm going to swear out a warrant for your arrest. Misappropriation of funds, manipulation, malfeasance.
George turns and starts out of the office as Potter picks up the phone and dials.
All right, George, go ahead. You can't hide in a little town like this.
George is out of the door by now. Camera moves closer to Potter.
Bill, this is Potter.
Exterior Main Street, Bedford Falls, night. George comes out of the bank into the falling snow. He crosses the street, tugs at the door of his old car, finally steps over the door and drives off. Exterior Martini's bar, night. An attractive little roadside tavern with the name Martini's in neon lights on the front wall. The place is an Italian restaurant with bar. The bottles sparkle. There are Christmas greens and holly decorating the place. It has a warm, welcoming spirit, like Martini himself, who is welcoming new arrivals. The booths and the checkered cloth-covered tables are full. There is an air of festivity and friendliness, and more like a party than a public drinking place. George is seated at the bar, and he has had a great deal to drink, far more than he's accustomed to.
Merry Christmas, glad you came.
How about that good spaghetti?
We got everything.
During this, camera moves closer to George. Nick, the bartender, is watching him solicitously. Seated on the other side of George is a burly individual drinking a glass of beer. George is mumbling.
God, you're Father in heaven. I'm not a praying man. If you're up there, you hear me? Show me the way. I'm at the end of my rope. Show me the way, God.
Yeah. Are you all right, George? I want someone to take you home. George shakes his head. Martini comes over to his side.
Why do you drink so much, my friend? Please, go home, Mr. Bailey. This is Christmas Eve.
The ugly man next to George, who has been listening, reacts sharply to the name Bailey.
Bailey? Which Bailey?
This is Mr. George Bailey. Without any warning, the burly man throws a vicious punch at George, who goes down and out. Martini, Nick, and several others rush up to him.
And the next time you talk to my wife like that, you'll get worse. She cried for an hour. It isn't enough she slaves teaching your stupid kids how to read and write, and you have to wall her out.
You get out of here, Mr. Welch.
Mr. Welch reaches in his pocket for money.
No, wait. I want to pay for my drink.
Never mind the money. You get out of here quick.
All right.
You ain't my best friend. Get out.
Nick and Martini shove Welch out the door, then run back to help George to his feet. George's mouth is cut and bleeding. You all right, George?
Who was that?
He's gone. Don't worry. His name is Welch. So he don't come to my place no more.
Oh, Welch. That's what I get from Frank.
Last time he come in here. You hear that, Nick?
Yes, you bet.
Where's my insurance policy? Oh, here.
He starts for the door.
Oh, no. Please don't go out this way, Mr. Bailey.
I'm all right.
Nick and Martini try to stop him, but he shrugs them off.
Oh, no. You don't feel so good.
I'm all right.
Please don't go away. Please.
George opens the door and exits to the street. Wipe to exterior residential street, night. George's car comes along an empty street through the falling snow. Suddenly swerves and crashes into a tree near the sidewalk of a house. George gets out to look at the damage and savagely kicks at the open door of the car, trying to shut it. The noise brings the owner out of the house.
What do you think you're doing?
George stands unsteadily near the car, shaken by the accident. The front lights are broken and the fender is ripped. George stands dully looking at the damage. The owner comes up looking at his tree. He leans over to examine the damages.
Now look what you did. My great-grandfather planted this tree.
George staggers off down the street, paying no attention to the man.
Hey you! Hey you! Come back here, you drunken fool! Get this car out of here!
Exterior bridge over river, night. George is crossing the approach to the bridge when a truck swings around the corner, nearly hits him.
Hey, what's the matter with you? Look where you're going.
The truck turns onto the bridge and George takes a narrow catwalk at the railing. George has stopped by the railing at the center of the bridge. The snow is now falling hard. Camera shooting down from George's ankle to the water, dotted with floating ice, passing under the bridge. Bridge railing at night. George stares down at the water, desperate, trying to make up his mind to act. He leans over, looking at the water, fascinated, glances furtively around him, hunches himself as though about to jump. From above George, a body hurls past and lands in the water with a loud splash. George looks down, horrified.
Help! Help!
George quickly takes off his coat and dives over on the railing into the water. George comes up, sees the man flailing about in the water, and the camera pans with him as he swims toward the man.
Help! Help!
Exterior toll house on bridge, night. The toll house keeper, hearing the cries for help, comes running out on the bridge with a flashlight, which he shines on the two figures struggling in the water below. Exterior river, night. The man in the river is Clarence, the angel whose voice we have heard speaking from heaven. George reaches him, grabs hold of him, and starts swimming for shore. Interior toll house on bridge, night. George, Clarence, and the toll keeper. George is seated before a wood-burning stove, before which his clothes are drying on the line. He is in his long winter underwear. He is sipping a mug of hot coffee, staring at the stove, cold, gloomy, and drunk, ignoring Clarence and the toll keeper, preoccupied by his near suicide and his unsolved problems. Clarence is standing on the other side of the stove, putting on his undershirt. This is a ludicrous 17th century garment, which looks like a baby's nightshirt, with embroidered cuffs and collar, and gathers the neck with a drawstring. It falls below his knees. The tollkeeper is seated against the wall, eyeing them suspiciously. Throughout the scene, he attempts to spit, but each time is stopped by some amazing thing Clarence does or says. Clarence becomes aware that his garments are amazing the tollkeeper.
I didn't have time to get some stylish underwear. My wife gave me this on my last birthday. I passed away in it.
The tollkeeper, about to spit, is stopped in the middle of it by this remark. Clarence, secretly trying to get George's attention, now picks up a copy of Tom Sawyer, which is hanging on the line, drying. He shakes the book.
Oh, Tom Sawyer. It's drying out too. You should read the new book Mark Twain's writing now.
The tollkeeper stares at him incredulously.
How'd you happen to fall in?
I didn't fall in. I jumped in to save George.
George looks up, surprised.
What? Save me?
Well, I did, didn't I? You didn't go through with it, did you?
Or what?
Suicide.
George and the tollkeeper react to this.
It's against the law to commit suicide around here.
Yeah, it's against the law where I come from, too.
Where do you come from?
He leans forward to spit, but is stopped by Clarence's next statement.
Heaven. I had to act quickly. That's why I jumped in. I knew if I were drowning, you'd try to save me. And you see, you did. And that's how I saved you.
The Tollkeeper becomes increasingly nervous. George casually looks at the strange, smiling little man for the second time.
Very funny.
Your lips bleeding, George.
George's hand goes to his mouth.
Yeah, I got busted John answer to a little prayer a little bit ago.
Oh, no. No, no. I'm the answer to your prayer. That's why I was sent down here.
How do you know my name?
Oh, I know all about you. I've watched you grow up from a little boy.
What are you, a mind reader or something?
Oh, no.
Who are you then?
Clarence Oddbody, AS2.
Oddbody. AS2. What's that AS2?
Angel second class.
The Tollkeeper's chair slips out from underneath him with a crash. He has been leaning against the wall with the wall on it, pushed back on two legs. The Tollkeeper rises and makes his way wearily out the door. From his expression, he looks like he'll call the nearest stop.
Cheerio, good man.
George rubs his head with his hand to clear his mind.
Order a martini upon those drinks.
He looks up at Clarence standing beside him.
Hey, what's with you? What did you say just a minute ago? Why did you want to save me?
That's what I was sent down for. I'm your guardian angel.
I want to be a bit surprised.
Ridiculous of you to think of killing yourself for money. $8,000.
Yeah, things like that. Now, how'd you know that?
I told you, I'm your guardian angel. I know everything about you.
Well, you look about like the kind of angel I get. For a fallen angel, aren't you? What happened to your wings?
I haven't won my wings yet. That's why I'm an angel second class.
I don't know whether I like it very much, but being seen around with an angel without any wings.
Oh, I've got to earn them. And you'll help me, won't you?
Sure. How?
By letting me help you.
Only one way you can help me. You don't happen to have $8,000 on you.
No. We don't use money in heaven.
No, that's right. I can forget. Comes pretty handy down here, Bob.
Oh.
I found it out a little late. I worked more dinner than a lot.
Now look, you mustn't talk like that. I won't get my wings with that attitude. You just don't know all that you've done. If it hadn't been for you.
Yeah, if it hadn't been for me, everybody would be a lot better off. My wife, my kids, my friend. Football fella, go off and hunt somebody else, will you?
No, you don't understand. I've got my job.
Ah, shut up, will you?
Clarence is not getting far with George. He glances up, paces across the room thoughtfully.
This isn't going to be so easy. So, you still think killing yourself would make everyone feel happier, eh?
Oh, I don't know. I guess you're right. I suppose it would have been better if I'd never been born at all.
What did you say?
I said I wish I'd never been born.
Oh, you mustn't say things like that. Wait a minute. That's an idea. What do you think? Yeah, that'll do it. All right. You've got your wish. You've never been born.
As Clarence speaks this line, the snow stops falling outside the building. A strong wind springs up and blows open the door to the shack. Clarence runs to close the door.
You don't have to make all that fuss about it.
As Clarence speaks, George cocks his head curiously, favoring his deaf ear, more interested in his hearing than in what Clarence has said.
You've never been born. You don't exist. You haven't a care in the world.
George feels his ear as Clarence talks.
No worries, no obligations, no $8,000 to get, no Potter looking for you with the sheriff.
George and Clarence. George indicates his bad ear.
Say something else in that.
Sure, you can hear out of it.
Well, that's the doggonest thing. I haven't heard any of that air since I was a kid. I was gonna jump into cold water.
Your lip stopped bleeding too, George.
George feels his lip, which shows no sign of the recent cut he received from Welch. He is now thoroughly confused.
You know about that? What's
George looks around as though to get his bearings.
stopped snoring, hasn't it? What's happened here? Come on, can make these clothes of ours are dry?
Our clothes are dry.
George feels the clothes on the line.
Well, you know about that. Harder than I thought. Now, come on, get your clothes on. We'll stroll up to my car and get.
They start dressing. George interrupts himself.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll stroll, you fly.
I can't fly. I haven't got any wings.
You haven't got your wings. Yeah, that's
Wipe to exterior street night. This is the same empty street where George's car swerved onto the tree near the sidewalk. George and Clarence come into the shot and up to the spot where George had left his car smashed against the tree. George looks around, but his car is nowhere to be seen, and the tree is undamaged.
What's the matter?
Well, this is where I left my car. It isn't here.
You have no car.
Well, I had a car. It was right here. Guess somebody moved it.
The owner of the house passes with some Christmas packages under his arm.
Oh, say, hey, where's my car?
Pardon?
My car. I'm the fellow that owns the car that ran through the street.
What tree?
What do you mean, what tree? This is here. I ran it. Got a big gash in the side of it.
The owner bends down to examine the trunk of the tree, then straightens up and smells George's breath. He backs away.
You must mean two other trees. You had me worried. One of the oldest trees in Pottersville.
Pottersville? Why, you mean Bedford Falls?
I mean Pottersville. Don't you think I know where I live? What's the matter with you?
The owner proceeds toward his house. George is completely bewildered.
I don't know. Either I'm off my nuts or you are. Well, maybe I left the car up at Martini. Well, come on, Gabriel.
He puts his arm around Clarence and they start off up the road.
Clarence.
It isn't me.
Wipe to Nick's bar. It is Martini's place, but almost unrecognizable. The cheerful Italian feeling is gone. It is now more of a hard drinking joint, a honky tonk. Same bar, tables have no covers. People are lower down and tougher. Nick, the bartender, is behind the bar. George and Clarence come in. George does not notice the difference, but Clarence is all eyes and beaming. They go up to the bar.
That's all right. Go on in, Martini. It's a friend of mine.
Two people leave the bar as they approach.
There's a place to sit down. Sit down.
Nick is wiping off the bar as they sit down.
Oh, hello, Nick. Hey, where's Martini?
You want a martini?
No, Martini, your boss. Where is he?
Look, I'm the boss. You want a drink or don't you?
Okay, all right. Double bourbon, quick, huh?
Okay, and what's yours?
I was just thinking. It's been so long since I...
Look, mister, I'm standing here waiting for you to make up your mind.
That's a good man. I was just thinking of a flaming rum punch. No, it's not cold enough for that. Not nearly cold enough. Wait a minute. I got it. Mulled wine. Heavy on the cinnamon and light on the cloves. Off with you, my lad, and be lively.
Hey, look, mister, we serve hard drinks in here for men who want to get drunk fast. We don't need any characters around to give the joint atmosphere. Is that clear? Or do I have to slip you my left for a convincer? As he says this, Nick leans over the counter and puts his left fist nearly in Clarence's eye. Clarence is puzzled by this conduct.
What's he talking about?
Nick, just give him the same response. He's okay.
Okay. Nick turns away to get the drinks.
Matter with him. Never saw Nick act like that.
You'll see a lot of strange things from now on.
Yeah. Hello, fella. You worry me. You got someplace to sleep?
Nope.
You don't, huh? Well, you got any money?
Nick is listening suspiciously to this conversation.
Nope.
No wonder you jumped in the river.
I jumped in the river to save you so I could get my wings.
Nick stops pouring the drinks, bottle poised in his hand.
Oh, that's
The cash register bell rings off stage. Clarence reacts to the sound of the bell.
Oh, somebody's just made it.
Hey, what?
Every time you hear a bell ring, it means that some angel's just got his wings.
George glances up at Nick.
Look, I think you better not mention getting your wings around
Why? Don't they believe in angels?
here. Yeah, but, you know.
And why should they be surprised when they see one?
Never grew up. He's. How old are you anyway, Clarence?
293. Next May.
Nick slams the bottle down on the counter. That does it. Out you two pixies go. Through the door, out the window.
Look, Nick, what's wrong?
And that's another thing. Where'd you come off calling me Nick?
Well, Meg, that's her name, isn't it?
What's that got to do with it? I don't know you from Adam's Fox. Hey, you, Rummy, come here. Come here. A small wreck of a man with weak, watery eyes, obviously a broken down panhandler, his hat in his hand. He can hardly believe his eyes. George can hardly believe his eyes. It is Gower, the druggist. Back to Nick at the bar. Didn't I tell you never to come panhandling around here? Nick picks up a seltzer bottle and squirts Gower in the face with it. The crowd laughs brutally. Gower smiles weakly as the soda runs off his face. Close shot on George, horrified. He leaps up and goes over to Gower.
Where's Gower? Where's Gower? He's George Bailey. Don't you know me?
No.
Throw him out. Throw him out. The bouncers throw Gower out the front door. George rushes back to the bar.
Hey, Nick, isn't that Mr. Gower, a druggist?
You know, that's another reason for me not to like you. That rum had spent 20 years in jail for poisoning a kid. If you know him, you must be a jailbird yourself. Would you show these gentlemen to the door?
Sure, this way, gentlemen.
Exterior, Nick's bar night. George and Clarence come flying through the door and land in the snow. Nick at the cash register, busy ringing a bell. Hey, get me. I'm giving out wings. Exterior, Nick's bar night. George and Clarence lying in the snow. George has a strange, puzzled look on his face. They remained for a moment as they landed, looking at each other.
Sorry.
Bottom of 145.
You see, George, you were not there to stop Gower from putting that poison into the...
What do you mean I wasn't there? I remember distinctly.
George catches a glimpse of the front of the building with the neon sign over the door. It now reads Nick's Plate instead of Martini's. George and Clarence get to their feet.
Hey, what's going on around here? Why is that be Martini's place?
He points to the sign and looks at Clarence. Clarence sort of hangs his head. George fixes him with a very interested look.
Look, who are you?
I told you, George, I'm your guardian angel.
George, still looking at him, goes up to him and pokes him. It's flesh.
Yeah, I know you. What else are you? What's this?
No, of course not.
Well, then why am I sitting away from thing?
Don't you understand, George? It's because you were not born.
Well, then, if I wasn't born, who am I?
You're nobody. You have no identity.
George rapidly searches his pocket for identification, but without success.
Oh, what do you mean identity? My name's George Bailey.
There is no George Bailey. You have no papers, no cards, no driver's license, no 4F card, no insurance policy.
George looks in his watch pocket.
You're not there either.
What?
Zuzu's petals.
George feverishly continues to turn his pockets inside out.
You've been given a great gift, George. A chance to see what the world would be like without you.
George is completely befuddled.
Now, wait a minute here. Wait a minute here. This is some sort of funny dream I'm having here. So long, mister. I'm going home.
He starts off. Clarence rises.
Home? What home?
Oh, shut up. Cut it out. You're crazy. That's what I think. You're screwy. And you're driving me crazy, too. I'm seeing things. I'm going home and see my wife and family. You understand that? I'm going home alone.
George strides off hurriedly. Clarence slowly follows him, glancing up toward heaven as he goes.
How am I doing, Joseph? Thanks. No, I didn't have a drink.
Exterior street. George moves into the scene. The sign bearing the name of the town reads Pottersville. George looks at it in surprise, then starts up the street toward the main part of town. As he goes, camera moves with him. The character of the place has completely changed. Where before it was a quiet, orderly small town, it has now become in nature like a frontier village. We see a series of shots of nightclubs, cafes, bars, liquor stores, pool halls, and the like, with blaring jazz music issuing from a majority of them. The motion picture theater has become a burlesque house. Gower's drugstore is now a pawnbroker's establishment, and so on. George stops before what used to be the offices of the building and loan. There's a garish electric sign over the entrance reading, "Welcome Jitterbugs." A crowd of people are watching the police, who are raiding the place and dragging out a number of screaming women, whom they throw into a patrol wagon. George talks to one of the cops.
Hey, where'd the building and loan move to?
The building what?
The Bailey building and loan. What's up there?
They went out of business years ago. George sees the struggling figure of Violet Bick, arrayed as a tart, being dragged into the patrol wagon.
Hey, Violet. You listen, that's Violet Bick.
I know.
I know that girl.
The cop shoves George to one side. He looks around and sees Ernie's taxi cruising slowly by.
Hey, Ernie. Ernie.
Exterior street. Ernie stops the cab and George enters it.
Ernie, take me home. I'm off my nut.
Where do you live?
Oh, no, doggone it, Ernie. Now, don't you start pulling that stuff. You know where I live. 320 Sycamore. Now, hurry up.
Okay. 320 Sycamore?
Yeah. Hurry up. You're sick.
Right.
He pulls down the flag on the meter and starts the cab. Interior cab, George and Ernie. Ernie is puzzled by the stranger.
Look here, Ernie. Straighten me out. I've got some bad liquor or something. Listen to me now. Now, you are Ernie Bishop. You live in Bailey Park with your wife and kid. That's right, isn't it?
You seen my wife?
See your wife? I'm in your house 100 times.
Look, bud, what's the idea? I live in a shack in Pottersfield and my wife ran away 3 years ago and took the kid. And I ain't never seen you before in my life.
Okay, just step on it. Just get me home.
Ernie turns to driving, but he's worried about his passenger. As he passes the burlesque house, he sees Bert the cop standing beside his police car. Attracting his attention, he motions to Bert to follow him, indicating he has a net in the back. Bert gets into his car and follows. Exterior George's house, night. The taxi pulls up to the curb and stops. As the cab is parked, George gets out and looks at the house.
Is this the place?
Of course it's the place.
Well, this house ain't been lived in for 20 years.
Exterior house. George is stopped momentarily by the appearance of the house. Windows are broken, the porch sags, one section of the roof has fallen, doors and shutters hang askew on their hinges. Like a doomed man, George approaches the house. Exterior cab. The police car has pulled up beside the cab, and Bert and Ernie stand watching George's actions.
What's up, Ernie?
I don't know, but we better keep an eye on this guy. He's bets, Bert.
Ernie switches on the spotlight of his cab and turns the beam toward the old house. Interior hallway, George's home. The interior of the house is lit up here and there, ghost-like, by Ernie's spotlight. No furniture, Cobwebs, wallpaper hanging and swinging, stairs are broken and collapsed. In a voice that sounds like a cry for help, George yells out,
Mary, Tommy, Pete, Janie, Zuzu, where are you?
Clarence suddenly appears, leaning against a wall.
They're not here, George. You have no children.
Where are you? What have you done with them?
Interior doorway. Bert is standing in the entrance with his gun in his hand. Ernie is a few feet behind him, ready to run.
All right, put your hands up. No fast moves. Come on here, both of you.
Bert, thank heaven you're here.
He rushes toward Bert.
Stand back.
Bert, what's happened to this house? Where's Mary? Where's my kids?
Watch him, Bert.
Come on.
Bert, Ernie, what's the matter with you two guys? You were here on my wedding night. You both of you stood out here on the porch and sung to us. Don't you remember?
You could better be going.
Look, know why don't you be a good kid and we'll take you in a doctor. Everything's gonna be all right.
Bert tries to lead George away by the arm, but George struggles with him, trying to explain.
Bert, now listen to me. Ernie, will you take me over to my mother's house? Bert, listen. It's that fellow there. He says he's an angel. He's trying to hypnotize me.
I hate to do this, fella.
Bert raises his gun to hit George on the head. As he does so, Clarence darts in and fixes his teeth in Bert's wrist, forcing him to let George go.
Run, George! Run, George!
George dashes out of the house and down the street as Bert grapples with Clarence and they fall to the ground wrestling. He sees Bert kneeling, trying to put handcuffs on Clarence.
Help! Joseph! Help!
Oh, shut up.
Help! Oh, Joseph! Help! Joseph!
Suddenly, Clarence disappears from under Bert's hands. Bert gets up, amazed by his vanishing.
Where'd he go? I had him right here.
Ernie's hair is now standing on end with fright.
I need a drink.
He runs out of the house.
Well, which way'd they go? Help me find him.
Exterior Bailey home, night. George runs up the path of the front door of the house and raps on the door. He rings the bell and taps on the glass when his attention is caught by a sign on the wall reading, Ma Bailey's boarding house. The door opens and a woman appears. It is Mrs. Bailey, but she has changed amazingly. Her face is harsh and tired. In her eyes, once kindly and understanding, there is now cold suspicion. She gives no sign that she knows him.
Well,
Mother,
what do you want?
It is a cruel blow to George.
Mother, it's George. I thought sure you remember me.
George who? If you're looking for a room, there's no vacancy.
She starts to close the door, but George stops her.
Mother, please help me. Something terrible's happened to me. I don't know what it is. Something's happened to everybody. Please let me come in. Keep me here until I get over it.
Get over what? I don't take in strangers unless they're sent here by somebody I know.
Well, I know everybody you know. Your brother-in-law, Uncle Billy.
You know him?
Well, sure I do.
When'd you see him last?
Today over at the house.
That's a lie. He's been in the insane asylum ever since he lost his business. And if you ask me, that's where you belong.
She slams the door shut in George's face. Exterior house night. George stands a moment, stunned. Then he turns and runs out to the sidewalk until his face fills the screen. His features are distorted by the emotional chaos within him. We see Clarence leaning on the mailbox at the curb, holding his volume of Tom Sawyer in his hand.
Strange, isn't it? Each man's life touches so many other lives, and when he isn't around, he leaves an awful hole, doesn't he?
I've heard of things like this. Got me in some kind of spell or something. Well, I want to get out of it. I'll get out of it. I know how to. I know the last man I talked to before all this stuff started happening to me was Martini.
You know where he lives?
Sure, I know where he lives. He lives in Bailey Park.
They walk out of the scene. Exterior cemetery, night. George and Clarence approach the tree from which the Bailey Park sign once hung. Now it is just outside a cemetery, with graves where the houses used to be.
Are you sure this is Bailey Park?
Oh, I'm not sure of anything anymore. All I know is this should be Bailey Park. Where are houses?
The two walk into the cemetery.
You weren't here to build them.
George wandering like a lost soul among the tombstones, Clarence trotting at his heels. Again, George stops to stare with frightened eyes at a tombstone. Upon it is engraved a name, Harry Bailey. Feverishly, George scrapes away the snow covering the rest of the inscription, and we read, "In memory of our beloved son, Harry Bailey, 1911 to 1919.
Your brother, Harry Bailey, broke through the ice and was drowned at the age of 9.
George jumps up.
That's a lie. Harry Bailey went to war. He got a Congressional Medal of Honor. He's in the lives of every man in that transport.
Every man on that transport died. Harry wasn't there to save them because you weren't there to save Harry. You see, George, he really had a wonderful life. Don't you see what a mistake it would be to throw it away?
Clarence,
Yes, George?
where's Mary?
Oh, well, I can't.
I don't know how you know these things, but tell me, where is she?
George grabs Clarence by the coat collar and shakes him.
I.
Tell me where she is. Tell me where my wife is.
I'm not supposed to tell.
Please, Clarence, tell me where she is.
You're not going to like it, George.
Where is she?
She's an old maid. She never married.
Where's Mary? Where is she?
Where is
she?
She's just about to close up the library.
George lets Clarence go and runs off. Clarence falls to the ground where he rubs his neck.
There must be some easier way for me to get my wings.
Exterior library, night. Mary comes out the door, then turns and locks it. We see George watching her from the sidewalk. Mary is very different. No buoyancy in her walk. None of the Mary's abandon and love of life. Glasses, no makeup, lips compressed, elbows close to body. She looks flat and dried up, but extremely self-satisfied and efficient. George, as close up on George as he watches her. Close shot, George and Mary on the sidewalk.
Mary.
She looks up, surprised but not recognizing him. Continues on.
Mary.
Mary starts to run away from him as he follows desperately.
Mary, Mary.
He catches up to her, grabs her by the arms, and keeps a tight grip on her. She struggles to free herself.
Mary, it's George. Don't you know me? What happened to us?
I don't know you. Let me go.
Mary, please. Oh, no, listen to me. Please, Mary, help me. Where's our kids? I need your help, Mary. Help me, Mary.
Mary breaks away from him and dashes into the first door she comes to, the Blue Moon Bar. Interior Blue Moon night. Small tables, booth, perhaps a counter. It is crowded. Many of the people are the same who were present during the run on the building and loan. Mary comes running in, screaming. The place goes into an uproar. George comes in, practically insane. Some of the men grab and hold on to him.
Mary, let me go. Mary, don't run away.
Somebody call the police. Hit him with the bottle. He needs a straitjacket.
That man, stop him.
Tom, hey, Charlie, where's my wife?
Mary lets out a final scream, then faints into the arms of a couple of women at the bar.
Mary.
Oh, no, you don't.
Mary.
George can't fight through the men holding him. Desperately, he thinks of Clarence and heads for the door.
Clarence, where are you?
Exterior sidewalk, night. Just as George breaks through the door, Bert arrives in his police car. He gets out and heads for the door and runs into George as he comes out.
Oh, it's you.
He grabs for George, who lets him have one square on the button, knocking him down, then continues running down the street yelling for Clarence. Bert gets up, takes out his gun, and fires several shots after the fleeing figure.
Stand back.
Bert gets into the police car and siren screaming sets off in pursuit of George. Wipe 2, exterior bridge over river, night. The same part of the bridge where George was standing before Clarence jumped in. The wind is blowing as it has all through the sequence. George comes running into shot. He is frantically looking for Clarence.
Clarence, help me, Clarence. Give me back. I don't care what happens to me. Only give me back to my wife and kids. Help me, Clarence, please. Please. I want to live again.
George leaning on the bridge railing, praying.
I want to live again. Please, God, let me live again.
George sobs. Suddenly, toward the end of the above, the wind dies down. A soft, gentle snow begins to fall. Close shot on George sobbing at the railing. The police car pulling up on the roadway behind him, and Bert coming into the scene.
Hey, George. George, you all right?
George backs away and gets set to hit Bert again.
Hey, what's the matter?
Now get out of here, Bert. I'll hit you again. Get out.
What's the Sam Hill you yelling for, George?
George?
George talks hopefully. George touches Bert unbelievingly. George's mouth is bleeding again.
Do you know me?
Know you? Are you kidding? I've been looking all over town trying to find you. I saw your car piled into that tree down there, and I thought maybe, hey, your mouth's bleeding. Are you sure you're all right?
George touches his lips with his tongue, wipes his mouth with his hand, laughs happily. His rapture knows no bounds.
My mouth's bleeding. Bert, my mouth's bleeding. Zuzu's bells. Zuzu's bear. Bert, what do you know about that? Merry Christmas!
He practically embraces the astonished Bert, then runs at top speed toward town. Long shot as George runs away from camera yelling.
Mary!
Wipe to exterior residential street night. George's wrecked car is smashed against a tree. He comes running into shot, sees the car, lets out a triumphant yell, pats the car, and dashes on. Exterior Main Street, Bedford Falls night. George sees that the Pottersville sign is now replaced by the original "You are now in Bedford Falls" sign.
Oh, Bedford Falls!
He turns and runs through the falling snow up the main street of the town. As he runs, he notices that the town is back to its original appearance. He passes some late shoppers on the street.
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas.
George. Exterior theater night as George runs by.
Merry Christmas, movie house!
Exterior Bedford Falls Emporium as George runs by.
Merry Christmas, Emporium!
Exterior building and loan offices as George runs by.
Merry Christmas, you old wonderful old building and loan!
Exterior bank. Close shot. George notices a light in Potter's office window and races across the street. Interior Potter's office night. Potter is seated working at his desk, his goon by his side. George pounds on the window.
Merry Christmas, Mr. Potter!
George runs off as Potter looks up from his work.
Happy New Year to you. In jail. Go on home. They're waiting for you.
Interior George's home night. The lights are on. There is a fire in the fireplace. The Christmas tree is fully decorated with presents stacked around. Entrance hall. Carter, the bank examiner, a newspaper reporter, and photographer, and a sheriff are waiting in the hall for George. George comes dashing in the front door.
Mary! Hello, Mr. Bank Examiner.
He grabs his hand and shakes it.
Mr. Bailey, there's a deficit.
I know, $8,000.
George, I've got a little paper here.
I'll pass a warrant for my arrest. It's a wonderful Merry Christmas.
The photographer sets off a flashbulb.
Of course. Where's Mary? Mary!
George runs into the kitchen. He gets no answer. As he goes,
Oh, look at this wonderful old house. Mary! Mary!
he comes running back to the hall.
Have you seen my wife?
Merry Christmas, Daddy.
Interior stairs night. The three children are at the top of the stairs. They are in their pajamas.
Kids!
George starts to run up the stairs and the old familiar knob on the banister comes off in his hand. He kisses it lovingly and puts it back, then continues up the stairs.
Hey, kids, Janie, Tommy! I can pick you up.
Interior top of stairs. George and the kids. He is hugging them.
Where's your lover?
She went looking for you with Uncle Billy.
Zuzu comes running out of her bedroom. George crushes her to him.
Daddy!
Zuzu, my old ginger snap. How do you feel?
Fine.
And not a smidge of temperature.
Oh, not a smidge of temp.
Interior hall, close shot, as Mary comes through the door, breathless and excited. The four men are watching with open mouths.
Oh,
Hello, George, darling.
Mary races up the stairs where George meets her in a fierce embrace.
Mary, Mary!
George, darling, where have you been?
George and Mary embrace tearfully.
George.
Mary, let me touch you. Oh, you're real.
Oh, George.
You have no idea what's happened to me.
You have no idea what happened.
He stops her with a kiss. She leads him excitedly down the stairs.
Well, come on, George. Come on downstairs, quick. They're on their way.
All right.
Mary leads George, who is carrying a couple of the kids on his back, to the living room, to a position in front of the Christmas tree.
Come on in here now. Now, you stand right over there by the tree. Right there. Don't move. Don't move. I hear him now, George. It's a miracle. It's a miracle.
He runs toward the front door and flings it open. Ad-lib sounds of an excited crowd can be heard. Uncle Billy, face flushed, covered with snow and carrying a clothes basket filled with money, bursts in. He is followed by Ernie and about 20 more townspeople.
Come in, Uncle Billy. Everybody in here! In here!
Uncle Billy, Mary, and the crowd come into the living room. A table stands in front of George. George picks up Zuzu to protect her from the mob. Uncle Billy dumps a basket full of money out onto the table. The money overflows and falls over. Isn't it wonderful? The rest of the crowd all greet George with greetings and smiles. Each one comes forward with money. In their pockets, in shoeboxes and coffee pots, money pours onto the table. Pennies, dimes, quarters, dollar bills. Small money, but lots of it. Mrs. Bailey and Mrs. Hatch push toward George. More people come in. The place becomes a bedlam. Shouts of gangway, gangway, as a new bunch comes in and pours out its money. Mary stands next to George watching him. George stands there overcome and speechless as he holds Zuzu. As she sees the familiar faces, he gives them sick grins. Tears course down his face. His lips frame their names as he greets them. Mary did it, George. Mary did it. She told a few people you were in trouble and they scattered all over town collecting money. They didn't ask any questions, just said, if George is in trouble, count on me. You never saw anything like it. Tom comes in, digging in his purse as he comes. Tom.
What is this, George? Another run on the bank?
Charlie adds his money to the pile.
Here you are, George. Merry Christmas.
Ernie is trying to get some system to the chaos.
Yeah, the wine form's still on the right.
Mr. Martini comes in, bearing a mixing bowl overflowing with cash.
Ah, Mr. Martini, Merry Christmas. Step right up here.
Martini dumps his money on the table.
I busted the jukebox too.
Mr. Gower enters with a large glass jar jammed full of notes.
Mr. Gower.
I made the rounds of my charge accounts.
Violet Bick arrives and takes out the money George had given her for a trip to New York.
Violet Bick!
I'm not going to go, George. I changed my mind.
Annie, the colored maid, enters, digging money out of a long black stocking.
I've been saving this money for a divorce, if I ever get a husband.
Mr. Partridge, the high school principal, is next in line. There you are, George. I got the faculty all out of bed. Hands his watch to Zuzu. Here's something for you to play with.
I wouldn't mind to have a roof over my head if it wasn't for you, George.
Ernie is reading a telegram as he has just received.
Just a minute. Quiet, everybody. Quiet, quiet. Now, this is from London. Mr. Gower cables you need cash. Stop. My office instructed to advance you up to $25,000. Stop. Hee-haw and Merry Christmas, Sam Wainwright.
The crowd breaks into a cheer as Ernie drops the telegram on top of the pile of money on the table.
Mr. Martini, how about some wine?
As various members of the family bring out a punch bowl and glasses, Janie sits down at the piano and strikes a chord. She starts playing Hark the Herald Angels Sing, and the entire crowd joins in the singing. We see a series of shots of the various groups singing the hymn, and some people are still coming in and dropping their money on the table. Carter, the bank examiner, makes a donation. The sheriff sheepishly looks at George and tears his warrant in small pieces. In the midst of this scene, Harry, in naval uniform, enters, accompanied by Bert, the cop. Hello, George. How are you?
Harry!
Mary, looks like I got here too late.
Mary, I got him from the airport as quickly as I could. The fool flew all the way up here in the blizzard.
Mrs. Bailey enters the scene.
Erik, how about your banquet in New York?
Oh, I left right in the middle of it as soon as I got Mary's telegram. Ernie hands Harry a glass of wine. Good idea, Ernie. A toast to my big brother George, the richest man in town. Once more, the crowd breaks into cheering and applause. Janie at the piano and Bert on his accordion start playing Auld Lang Syne, and everyone joins in. George, still holding Zuzu in his arms, glances down at the pile of money on the table. His eye catches something on top of the pile, and he reaches down for it. It is Clarence's copy of Tom Sawyer. George opens it and finds the inscription written in it. Dear George, remember, no man is a failure who has friends. Thanks for the wings. Love, Clarence.
What's that?
It's a Christmas present. Very dear friend.
At this moment, perhaps because of the jostling of some of the people on the other side of the tree, a little silver bell on the Christmas tree swings to and fro with a silvery tinkle. Zuzu closes the cover of the book and points to the bell.
Look, Daddy. Teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
That's right. That's right.
He looks up toward the ceiling and winks.
Attaboy, Clarence.
The voices of the people singing swell into the final crescendo for the end.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for watching this screenplay reading. We'll be back, and I hope you're back for more. Good night, everyone.